Alright, so after a couple of slower weeks, if you will, with respect to email feedback, we've got nearly a full house today of feedback. Nothing from our essay writers, if you will, with respect to either Mr. Dorsey or Amr. But that's okay. No worries. It always takes a little bit longer for them to get their emails out because, life gets in the way, of course, and they have a great deal to say. Everybody has a great deal to say. It's all good. But we've definitely got more than enough feedback for this particular week, so let's dive headfirst into it. John Rosler leads us off, as always. He sent a couple of emails this particular week. He told us last week that he was celebrating his birthday, so of course, happy birthday to John with respect to that. But he sent 2 emails, birthday highs and birthday lows, to start us off. He's got one other as well. I'm going to read them in the order that he sent them. He sent the birthday lows first, so let's just get that stuff out of the way. Originally, just in case he did something chronologically as far as like when he sent them, as far as how he wrote them, I should say. So he starts off with this birthday lows email. He says, originally I was going to have this as one email, but figured it would be easier to send pics this way if I split it in 2 parts. Yes, because he did send pictures again as well. He says, overall, I'd say my birthday weekend was an 8 out of 10. I'll start with the lows. Okay, good. See, so this is his natural progression. We're starting with this one. All right, good. He says, Friday, as a gift, my father got me and Tam a stay at the Sheraton in Petaluma. Only 2 things were terrible about this. The first one was I almost didn't get the room. The booking site screwed up and had my father's full name as his first name and my full name as a last name. Wow, that's really silly. Okay, so the first name, his dad's first name, Kenneth Rossler, and last name, John. Okay, that's wow. You know what? And I've seen that type of glitch before where like websites or whatever is automated and it's not AI. It's just the algorithm or however they have it programmed will literally treat your entire name as one of your names, right? Like for me, it'd be like Ray Smith is my whole first name. No, it's not at all. And then like my last name, because my full name that I go by is Raymond Eric Smith Jr. And like they'll put Raymond Smith as my first name, and then they'll put like Eric Jr. or Jr. just as my last name. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. So this is unfortunately something I have seen before. He says, when I told my dad this, he jokingly had a theory that the booking people were on drugs. Either that or just the computer being stupid and nobody checked it. He says the other thing was our hotel TV went by Eastern Standard Time and not Pacific Standard Time. So I didn't get to watch WWE SmackDown after my B-Day dinner, but SmackDown has been pretty lackluster the last couple of months anyway, so not really that much of a low. Okay. So that's definitely not as bad as not getting the room. But yeah, that's the time change. That can be a difference maker, right? Like when we were in Frisco a couple of months ago for my sister's wedding, and the Saturday after the wedding, Michigan was playing, and it wasn't a game that I necessarily needed to watch, and wasn't really, we were going to do other stuff that day, so it wasn't like I was just going to sit in the hotel and watch college football. But if I wanted to, the game being at noon would have meant I would have had to get up at what, 9 in the morning? Which, don't get me wrong, we were already up by that point in the day, but yeah, that's early. That's real early, to get up for football. I mean, that's when we were kids, we would get up that early for Saturday morning cartoons. As older adults, I don't know that we do the same for like football and whatnot, but it depends, I guess, on your devotion. I guess there might be a Michigan fan out there saying, well, Ray, you just weren't devoted enough if you're not going to get up at 9 in the morning to watch Michigan football. They played Central. They beat them by like 50. It wasn't that big of a deal, but at any rate, I hear you on the whole time change thing. So that was Friday, he said. Saturday, he says, the good most certainly outweighed the bad. Honestly, the 2 things I didn't like was the uncomfortable legroom at the Jesse McCartney concert, and the concert went on late because someone in the audience had a panic attack. Although I got to give Jesse credit that it was nice of him to check on the concert goer. Unfortunately, he says, due to my limited time, parking, and the rain, I was forced to miss his most well-known song, Beautiful Soul, at the end, but at least someone taped it and got to watch the performance next day. Still a good show overall. Funny enough, it was actually a very similar situation to my first concert when seeing the Stones, which apparently that day he said it was rainy day, limited parking situation, and other factors forced us to leave the concert early, missing out on signature songs, though I'd argue, he says, that the former was even more understandable as it was at the Oakland Coliseum outside. Meanwhile, Jesse was inside at the SF Warfield. But he said they were in major Bay Area cities. Both concerts were in celebration of my birthday, and also both concerts involved hotel stays. All right. Uh, Interesting coincidences indeed. He said Sunday, so I had this fun idea to do one last Power Rangers photo shoot since my friend spent money for a power sword. But the sword still hasn't arrived, as apparently it was back ordered despite it being a month at this point since he bought it. I had other ideas I wanted to do as well, so we still did them as planned. We had this funny idea of wearing our Mario, Luigi, and Peach hats on top of our helmets, so that's what we did. I'll send you some additional photos next flight chat, he says. Me, Omid, and Tammy also played MMPR Rita's Rewind. Playing as the characters we were dressed as, you can kind of tell what game we're playing. He says, overall, as the best anecdote to describe these lows, it's like the Stones song goes, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you'll find you get what you need. By the way, let me know if you listen to Beast of Burden yet. Those songs you picked were good too. By the way, the reason I'm wearing a Night Swing shirt because it's McCartney. It's because McCartney voiced Dick Grayson in Young Justice. He did? I didn't know that. Okay, but I see the pictures of the one of you guys wearing your Mario, Luigi, and Peach hats over your Power Rangers outfits. And then, okay, all right. I wasn't sure what you meant about the game. Okay, I see that what you mean as far as like playing the video game. You're all in full costume. And yeah, if you know this game, you probably know exactly what game it is that they're playing on screen. And then, all right, so there's the Nightwing shirt. Oh, Luigi cake. Happy birthday, Luigi. Good deal. And that looks like an outdoor shot of the venue where you were at. Cool. Awesome. All right, so that's the Lowe's email. That's the birthday Lowe's email from John. Now on to the highs email, the birthday highs, which looks like it might be, well, I don't know, might not be a longer email, but he says, I'll do a quicker breakdown of the highs. Friday, he says, birthday dinner was fun, ate Mary's Pizza. He says, my dad, Tammy, another friend, and a friend of my dad's attended. Saturday, Tammy and him spent most of the day in San Francisco. Got some birthday freebies, free entree at Panda Express. Oh, nice. Free ice cream at Ben & Jerry's. A free dessert at Applebee's. All right. Went on the trolley for the first time to Fisherman's Wharf. Went on top of the Pier 39 Ferris wheel. Okay, I wanted to do that. Like, I wanted to ride the trolley and I wanted to go to Fisherman's Wharf. I'm not good with heights, so didn't really want to go on that Ferris wheel. But yeah, those were things that we wanted to do. If we'd had another day, if we'd had more time, we would have done it. Next time we go out to Frisco, because I would like to go back at some point, definitely need to do that for sure. Because yeah, that would the trolleys are iconic, right? And so is Fisherman's Wharf. So yeah, and maybe even I don't know how far the Tanner's house is, because that's another thing. It's like, where's the Tanner's house? Want to see where the Tanners grew up, for people who are fans of Full House or even Fuller House. If you watch the Netflix reboot, or not reboot, revival, really. Yeah, wanted to see where that was. But either way, cool, good deal. He says Sunday, photo shoot, video games, Benihana's. Ooh, Benihana's, nice. Friends and family. Quick bonus, he says, I made this Power Ranger shrine on my kitchen desk. Our Power Ranger helmets, an extra half-mast Green Ranger helmet, action figures and figurines of red and green, photo of him and Jason David Frank, a little in the back, photos of him and Tam, a rock with the Green Ranger that he painted on over a year ago, a Green Ranger amulet coin necklace that Omid got him as a birthday gift, weapons including a launch cycle gun from the 1990s. These are probably in all the pics that he sent down below. He says some additional things you'll see are South Park's Randy Marsh wearing a Sizzler hat, a custom fan of the Pokemon Poliwhirl, a green alien phone holder, some family photos. James Gunn's thread about how people react to DC movies are very, very much in the minority. All right. Gifts. He says Tammy got me this Stratocaster blue guitar, also a Super Mario Brothers lamp, a $5 Google Play gift card, a $50 Panda Express gift card from her sister. His aunt and uncle got him $100. His mom got him a $50 Visa gift card. His great aunt gave him a $35 Amazon gift card. The aforementioned green amulet necklace, a painting of cats, the aforementioned hotel room from his dad, a 5 nights at Freddy's keychain, and a Starbucks gift card. All right. Going through that list, first of all, that's a great haul for birthdays, obviously. So that's cool. But if you notice, like in the last 5 to 10 years, like remember, like depending on how old you are, remember when like relatives used to give you money envelopes with cash? Like that happened all the time. Like from my parents, from my aunts and uncles, cash was like, king with respect to the gift that kept on giving, as you got older. When you were younger and they knew you wanted toys, and you could just go through the JCPenney catalog or wherever to see exactly what they wanted within price range, if you will. That was one thing. Or if they'd buy you clothes, right? Because they'd buy you clothes because they you need a new pair of pants, or you need a new shirt, or you need some new socks or whatever, right? They do that and buy you the practical gifts as a kid. And as you get older, it's like, well, they know what they want and they have a style and they're older now. So let's just get them cash. Let's just get them money and they can buy whatever it is. And that has totally turned into gift cards. And, gift cards started out as like the specific retailers. And then it was like Visa and MasterCard. They're like, okay, let's just get them gift cards they can spend wherever they want. And that's totally what it is now. It's all gift cards. So like around the holidays, especially like around here, and I knew working 7 years in like video game retail at GameStop, I saw this all the time. Gift cards around this time of year would proliferate as far as what people were using to spend money on, to buy video games and to get accessories and whatnot. But it's just interesting how times have changed, right? We've gone from cash to gift cards, and now, of course, they sell digital gift cards. Is that the next wave? Is that what we're doing? Is it going to be, okay, now I'm no longer giving you a physical gift card. Now I'm giving you a digital gift card that you redeem on your phone, and you'll spend it that way. Probably something to that effect, but just an interesting thing, I think, to note. I'm going to look at these pictures real quick first before getting to the rest of John's email. All right, yep, there's the sundae with the cherry on top. There's the shrine. Oh, okay, all right, I see. That's all right. Everything, like, it's as described. I did not realize that he does have that James Gunn post framed. Yeah, no, that's cool. Um, the frame's a little. No, the frame is nice. It's just the picture itself, and this is the nature of threads, because it's the dimensions aren't quite the same size, but it works. It still works. Oh, there's the Stratocaster. All right, see the Stratocaster. That's nice. And then the Mario Brothers lamp, right? That's cool. So it's Mario, like, oh, we're talking 8-bit, like Super Mario Brothers Mario, the original for the Nintendo system. And then a mushroom, fire flower, and the invincibility star. I can hear all that MIDI music playing in my head as I look at this. And then, yep, another vantage point from where they were at. Oh, this is at the freeway. This is the Ferris wheel. This time the Ferris wheel. Yeah, that's high. That's high. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can deal with that, but perhaps. But glad that you had a fun time. Glad that the good certainly outweigh the bad with respect to your birthday. Glad it sounds like you had a good one, John. All right, on to your questions. He says not too many this week, but he's got a few. First question. You mentioned you don't know when we'll get to Justice League or Super Friends. My prediction, he says, 2031 at the earliest, 2037 at the latest. 2031 would make it 10 years since we last saw a True Justice League movie. Would it? 2031? 10 years? Oh, okay, I got you. From Zack Snyder's Justice League. Okay, for sure. 2037 would make it 20 years since we last saw a disingenuous JL film. Yep. Does my prediction seem accurate? It just seems to me like I figured out Gunn's rule. A Justice League film won't happen until each member has had at least one film or show. Based on the current schedule, by 2028, we'll have had 1.5 Superman movies, a Lanterns TV show, a Wonder movie, a Batman team-up movie. Supergirl could become a member too. I think to get to JL by 2031, we'll need to have at least one Flash film or show, one Aquaman film or show. Will Hawkgirl be a part of the official team? 2031 seems like the right year. It's hard to explain, but I think the audience will be ready to do closer to Avengers numbers for a JL film than X-Men numbers if Chapter 1 continues to be a success, despite what some gatekeepers will try to convince themselves. I don't think certainly in the realm of possibility with respect to your idea, John, but here's my thing. I keep thinking in my head, this is just my perspective, I think James Gunn is trying to be as opposite of Marvel as he possibly can with this universe. And I think it's not just because he wants to come up with his own flavor and his own structure for a cinematic universe and not just make it seem like he's doing MCU 2.0, but also I think he wants change. He wants to give the audience something different than what we've had in the last 17, 18 years. So that's why I am really hesitant to think of like when we're going to get a Justice League movie. And because people don't realize this, I feel like when we talk about this as fans, we don't realize that our structure for when we think a Justice League movie is going to happen, or when we think a team up is going to happen, or when we think solo movies are going to happen, is based off of our prior experience with the MCU. It is, whether we mean it to be or not. We didn't have a scenario like this until the MCU started. Before then, what was our thought process? Was anybody thinking before 2008, before the Avengers plan, before the MCU started, was anybody really thinking, well, the Justice League is each got to have solo movies before we get to a Justice League movie? Or were people just thinking, hey, make a Justice League movie at this point in time? It doesn't matter. Right? We weren't thinking a build up. So now, because of the MCU and because of how they've done things for 17, 18 years, it informs our perspective in terms of trying to guess what James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to do. And I'm reluctant to do that because I think they're going to go off book. So far, they've already gone off book. So far, they've given us an animated series, a movie, and a live action series that are all intertwined, interconnected. That is not how Marvel started. Marvel did not start with animation or television. Marvel started with movies only with respect to the MCU. And it took them several years before they brought animation and live action into the fray and connected it canonically, if you will, within the universe. We've already started in a different position in that regard. And next year, we're going to get television. We're going to start with live action television. We're going to get 2 movies, right? And we'll see what happens in between. And he just posted another image a couple of hours ago on Threads of new storyboards that he's got for Man of Tomorrow. So that film is actively in development right now. The sequel, if you will, the next chapter, I guess you could say, not the sequel to Superman, but the next chapter of the Superman saga. So I feel like he's going to go off book. So I don't think there's a rule. I think he has rules, but I don't think it's set based on any of our prior knowledge. Because reading your description, John, whether you consciously meant to do it or not, this is based off of your perception of the MCU as far as the structure. I know you're going to say it wasn't, and you're going to say, no, I'm not copying it. And I'm not saying you're copying it. I'm saying that what the MCU did has informed our perspective to try and guess what's going to happen next. Because we've seen what success has. You even said later on, you said that but 2031, you think the audience will be ready to do closer to Avengers numbers for a Justice League film than X-Men numbers if Chapter 1 continues to be a success, right? So you're still basing this off of the MCU as a template. I think he wants to go against that template. That's what my bet is that he wants to go against that template. So I don't even think the Justice League film that we're going to get, should we get one, is even going to be the Justice League roster as we think it's going to be. Like you mentioned Aquaman and Flash and maybe Supergirl. I don't even know if it's going to be that. I mean, Supergirl obviously will be introduced, but who knows what his plans for either Flash or Aquaman are. And the only other members that we know of, we know the Trinity has been spoken of, right? We know about the Brave and the Bold film. We know about Wonder Woman, that Anna Nagara writing that script. We know about those. And obviously Superman has been established. But beyond that, I don't know what his ideas are for the makeup of this Justice League, whatever it is going to be, right? From them evolving out of the Justice Gang into the Justice League, which that much I do think will happen, but I don't know as far as the actual structure of who he's going to use in the roster. Like, that's up to him, and I just think he's going to go off book. I do. I think he's going to go off book, and I think he's going to give us something maybe a little unconventional. And I realize that people could say, well, it was unconventional to have Cyborg in the Justice League instead of Martian Manhunter. Yeah, but it wasn't at the time, because New 52 it was still, like, in terms of the development of the DCEU, New 52 ruled the day initially, and then of course it gave way to Rebirth in 2016, which is when I started reading the comics, and was reading them kind of religiously for about a year and a half or so until it just got really unwieldy for me to buy them on a regular basis. But my point is that I just think he's going to try and go against the grain of what we've seen in the MCU. So I'm unwilling to guess what his schedule is and to guess what his rule is. I'm just going to say whatever his rule is, it's going to be as far away from MCU structure as possible in that regard. I will say that. So I'm not saying that your idea is impossible. I'm just saying I don't think he's going to go that route. But we will see, all in due time. It's amazing that 2031... Let's see, it's 2025 now, 2031 is 6 years from now. A whole lot can happen in those 6 years, a whole lot in terms of the development of the franchise, that is. I'm not even just talking about organizationally in terms of like buying and selling and how corporations and whatnot are going to work and what these studios are even going to look like in 2031 or what the industry is going to look like in 2031. I had mentioned before, when we talked about the analysts predicting when box offices was going to get returned back to the pre-2020 numbers, and they were projecting 2029, right? So that's only 2 years prior. So yes, that would seem to fall in line if their predictions are right. that would seem to fall in line with what you're talking about as far as 2031 for a Justice League movie. But again, what will that movie be? What will that Justice League roster actually comprise itself of? I don't know. And I am willing to let James Gunn dictate that himself and present it to us for consumption in that regard. So we will see what happens, good sir. All right, on to your second question, which I have to be honest with you, John. It sounds like your second question means that you listened to none of what I said what I've been saying over the last couple of days with respect to FlightCast and even some stuff on Patreon. But either way, he says, I heard a rumor that Saudi Arabia wants to buy Warner Brothers. I'm always trepidatious when it comes to Saudi. I'm not happy that WWE had this working relationship with them. Like, do I seriously want my DC characters to have blood money on them? Maybe Vigilante's warning of using blood money has a curse after all. The only good part is that the Snyderverse will likely get restored because the Prince is apparently this huge nerd. He's a WWE fan and a Zack Snyder fan. This sounds completely asinine, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Go back and listen to my episode on Wednesday, John. Watch any of Film Junkie's videos. It's bullshit. It's 1,000% bullshit. Lies were being fed by Matt McGloin at Cosmic Book News and Tyrone Magnus on YouTube to spin a narrative out of actual facts. The fact is, John, Saudi Arabia doesn't want to buy Warner Brothers. The fact is that Saudi Arabia allegedly has been approached by the Ellisons at Paramount and also by Brian Roberts at Comcast to help them fund their bids for Warner Brothers. The only entities that have bid for Warner Brothers officially whatsoever are Paramount, Universal, and Netflix. That happened 2 days ago. That's it. Any rumor that you heard, bullshit. Absolute, pure, unadulterated bullshit. Okay? No. Anything you're hearing with respect to the Saudi Arabia wanting to bring back the Snyderverse, bullshit, makes absolutely no effing sense. Okay? I can't say that strongly enough. Let's move on from this bullshit ass ridiculousness. Anyway, I'm a little like hopped up on that because that we've been dealing with this all week, John. We've been dealing with this nonsense with respect to people getting grifted and people following this absolute batshit idea because this one producer posted a thing and he stole the numbers straight from the Variety article. He stole the numbers from the Variety article and said that Saudi Arabia was one signature away from a $71 billion deal. $71 billion just happens to be the number that Paramount was allegedly seeking to make their bid if the Saudis helped them, right? And Paramount denies this. Paramount came out and said that Variety was wrong in terms of their report, so that's why I have to say allegedly, but that's where the number came from, right? That and also Film Junkie pointed out the $100 billion AI investment that they want to make that would affect Hollywood. That's different. That's not them wanting to buy Warner Brothers and restoring the Snyderverse. John, it makes no freaking sense. None whatsoever. So, sorry. I don't mean to be so harsh on your question, but it's stupid. It's really, really stupid. It's a dumb rumor. Do not follow that bullshit. It's just, let's push that into the back burner. Plenty of truth that I have been talking about and many others have been talking about that we can focus on going forward. All right. So, on to your third question, which I'm sure will be better. Rewatch the Austin Powers trilogy for the first time in years, he says. I always wondered what a fourth film would be like. Here's how I would have done it. Here, we got a what if. He says, here's how I would have done it if it has been released in 2007, choosing 2007, because I think it ought to be done while the cast are still young and alive, and maybe he does this instead of the Love Guru. Oh, that would have been a better idea. A fourth Austin Powers film would have been a much better idea than the Love Guru, wouldn't it? He says, perhaps this time, take some inspiration from Craig's 007 films and Connery's Never Say Never Again Thunderball remake. He says Austin is retired as a spy. Maybe he retires after Foxy Cleopatra dies in some explosion, or she leaves him. I don't know. I'd rather she leaves him. I don't want Foxy Cleopatra to die. He says, and has to be coerced out of retirement. Scott is still the villain, but teams up with a former Bond actor playing a villain as an in-joke. Dr. Evil, Dougie, and Powers do a brothers team up like Alan, Loki, Thor, and Arthur/Orm. What's your opinion on the Austin Powers franchise? I just don't think a fourth movie can be done today unless they parody Never Say Never Again. Okay, I agree with that. I completely agree with that. Your scenario is not a bad idea, truthfully. And the minute you said perhaps take some inspiration from Craig's 007 films and Connery's Never Say Never Again, I was like, yeah, no, yes, definitely something that has to acknowledge the passage of time, right? They have to acknowledge that it's been however many years that it's been this long if they're going to do that, right? Not just for the sake of Mike Myers' age, for the age of anybody else that would be involved, but just the passage of time since we last saw an Austin Powers in action, right? And maybe it is too long, maybe it is too far. Like Toy Story, like how long was it in between Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3? It was like from what, 1999, if I'm not mistaken, to like 2010. We're in a longer period of time than 11 years, right? So I don't know. It might be too late to do that. But if they did do it, I think your idea is probably the best in order to, like, mitigate the passage of time with respect to in-universe and also like outside as far as the actual aging of Mike Myers and everybody else involved. If they wanted to do that, truthfully. As far as my thoughts personally on the Austin Powers franchise, I wasn't that big a fan of Goldmember. I'd have to rewatch it at some point. They're not necessarily movies that I like, rewatch on a regular basis. I do find them funny. I mean, I don't find necessarily all the humor funny, but there are certain jokes in like the first two movies that I definitely do find funny. Humor is very subjective. And I don't dislike the movies, and like I said, I've seen all three of them. It's been a long time since I've seen all three of them, and they're not necessarily movies that I like, am in a hurry to rewatch. But I do like them. They're all right, in that regard. So yeah, I'm not anti Austin Powers. If they randomly decide they wanted to make a fourth one and follow your blueprint for that, yeah, I'd be fine with it. Yeah, I would check it out. I don't know that I go to the theater to see it, but it would definitely be something I'd check out probably later, like on streaming or something, more than likely. He has one side note that he has here at the bottom. He says, how some restaurants have Mountain Dew exclusives, KFC Sweet Lightning Peach and Taco Bell Baja Blast, even though the latter now sells them in stores. While Applebee's has an exclusive favorite flavor too, Berry Bash, and I think it's meant to be a mixture of wild berry and passion fruit, and that's the drink you see next to my ice cream. Okay, in the picture. Okay, I see. I gotcha. And he says, and yeah, I don't think cherry is all that bad. Even South Park made a joke about them being bad. Although, funny enough, I don't like strawberry starburst, and I like most things strawberry. Okay, now I get why you mentioned this side note. I discovered Tootsie Fruit Chews for Halloween. They're almost exactly the same as Starburst, except there's different flavors. If you ever wanted to try lime-flavored Starburst, Tootsie Fruit Chews. Okay, if Tootsie Fruit Chews are they the same thing? I think I know what they are. Let's see. I'm going to just see if I can Google this and get a picture of exactly what these are. Because I think that this essentially, yeah, okay. So here's the thing about Tootsie Fruit Chews. So this is another one of those candies that back in the day, I swear only popped up during Halloween. Obviously, you can buy them in bulk now, like any time of the year. But back then, you only saw these in Halloween. And to me, these just looked like Tootsie Rolls that were different flavors, right? They're not chocolate, right? There'd be vanilla, there'd be cherry, right? Those are like the two most common flavors I remember seeing. I think there might have also been a banana, if I'm not mistaken, which I never ate because I'm not a fan of banana whatsoever. But yeah, I just looked at these as different flavor Tootsie Rolls. But yeah, Fruit Chews, yeah, and that's what they're called, Tootsie Fruit Chews. But yeah, don't have an issue with that. He brought this up, just in case people don't know, he brought this up because of what I was talking about last week in terms of Pop-Tarts, with respect to Frosted Cherry being my favorite flavor, and me not really liking anything strawberry flavored at all outside of Strawberry Starburst. So that's why he brought up that last note. But lime flavored Starburst, I don't know. I'd try it once because I'm not really big on yellows either, and I feel like, I mean, that's more lemony, but lemon, lime, that type of deal. I know there's a difference, but kind of the same citrusy idea. But either way, yeah, all right. I have to think about that one. Never even thought about these until just now. Yeah, obviously you'd be able to buy these anywhere now. Walmart, Target, wherever, right? So the third email that he sent, this was not a revelation to me because I imagine there's more than a few people that are in the same boat with you, John. He says, I've never heard of Dutch. I've watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and it's one of the very few Thanksgiving movies out there. Solid film. I have not heard of Dutch, however. Ed O'Neill is in it, I see. What's the movie about? Oh, and if Austin Powers had another love interest, my bosom. He said, sorry, I couldn't resist. Yep, I got it. But the way he spelled it, my, M-A-I, and then bosom, B-U-Z-U-M. Yep, that would be, yes, that would definitely, yeah, that would absolutely fall in line. That falls in character in line with the franchise. Yeah, I think you understand Austin Powers quite well. Not that it's terribly difficult to understand. But here's the thing about Dutch. Because, yeah, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is like the only other like Thanksgiving movie, like Thanksgiving proper movie. Like, we're talking about theatrically released people. And I know people, you can think of, well, what about this movie? What about that movie? Yes, there have been others, but I'm saying, like, as far as classic, John Hughes movies, if you will, right? Because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was written and directed by John Hughes. Dutch was written by John Hughes. The plot of Dutch, and people have accused it of being similar to Planes, Trains because it's a road trip movie. But the idea is that Ed O'Neill plays a working class businessman named Dutch Dooley who is dating Jo Beth Williams' character, and she is a woman who is pretty much working class herself, but she married Shooter McGavin, the actor, right? His name is Reed Standish in the movie, but he's played by Christopher McDonald. They married, had a son named Doyle, got divorced, but he still lives, or she still lives rather, in a house that Reed pays for, and so there's kind of like this, not a blackmail situation, but like basically the son loves as a prissy, like preppy asshole, just like his father Reed, and he goes to a boarding school down in Atlanta, and the mom would like Doyle to come home for Thanksgiving. The son wants really nothing to do with it because he identifies far more with his father than his mother. The problem is the father has decided, well, I was going to take Doyle for Thanksgiving this particular season, but I have a business trip, which is bullshit. He's going to do some other stuff. But he's basically pawning the son off on the mother at the last second. And Dutch offers to go down to Atlanta, I think it's Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, down south, to go get Doyle from his boarding school and bring him home to Chicago, because all of John Hughes' movies center in some form around Chicago, where Jo Beth Williams lives, where her character lives. Natalie, I think her name is. I believe her name is Natalie. At any rate, I love this movie, but it's been a decent amount of time. I don't remember all the details. I'm going to rewatch it obviously this week for the Patreon flight review episode. But at any rate, so that's what happens is Dutch goes down there to go get Doyle, and Doyle obviously is extremely resistant, very annoying, and physical hijinks and whatnot ensues, and they go on this road trip to get back up north. And it's not just a case of the son learning, what actual family love is, that his father just doesn't know how to give because his father's an asshole, but also there's a class structure with respect to this. And I'll talk about this for sure on Patreon in a couple of days. I'm either going to do this before the day before Thanksgiving, or I'm going to do the day of, if I'm not mistaken, one of the two. But the thing is there is definitely an air of okay, the upper class versus the working class, right? Not even the middle class, but the working class, right? Because there is definitely this arrogance and this pretension, and Reed and Doyle thumb their nose at working class people like Dutch, and Dutch obviously takes issue with that, and that's a lot of where the stuff happens, a lot of where the conflict and a lot of where the growth and whatnot and the characters happens in this movie. And it's really good. It's really underrated. I imagine a lot of people are not aware of it because it doesn't even get the same physical media treatment that other John Hughes, The Great Outdoors. The Great Outdoors is another John Hughes movie that he wrote and didn't direct. That doesn't get nearly as much attention as his other films, the classic ones that he wrote and directed. But I can still find The Great Outdoors on Blu-ray, on Amazon right now. I can't do that with Dutch, at least not for the same price. Here, and I'll give you an example here. I just want to see. I'm going to go on Amazon here real quick. I looked this up recently because I was curious. And it's Black Friday, right? There's supposed to be deals and stuff like that, right? The Great Outdoors. The Great Outdoors, which that's a classic, that's Dan Aykroyd, John Candy, written by, although I feel like John Candy should get higher billing because his character is definitely the bigger character. But at any rate, I can buy The Great Outdoors on Blu-ray for $8.24 and have it prime delivered tomorrow. There's even a double feature. If I wanted to get the DVD, I could get a double feature of The Great Outdoors and Uncle Buck for $5. That would be delivered tomorrow to me from Amazon, right? So even that's easy. But if I want to look for Dutch, here's the deal. I can buy Dutch on DVD for $9.99. If I want the Blu-ray copy As I scroll down here, is it even showing it? Wow, the Blu-ray copy isn't even listed when I just look up Dutch movie. But if I type in Dutch Blu-ray, I can buy a used copy of it for $498.02. I'm going to repeat that because it bears repeating. If I want to buy a single disc Blue Amaray case of Dutch in Blu-ray format, it's $498.02 used. Apparently, it's used like new, sold by a bookseller named D. Wade. Now, why is this movie lunatically priced? I mean, this is utter lunacy. There's absolutely no way in Hades that I would ever pay this much, especially for a single disc in a blue, cheapy, chintzy Amaray case. I do not like Amaray cases whatsoever. It's part of the reason why I collect steelbooks almost exclusively. But the reason for this is because when this was released on Anchor Bay, and I think Shout also did a version of it, if I'm not mistaken. I think there have been 2 releases, but they were many years ago, and it's never been reprinted. It's never been redone. They never felt the need to do it. So it's an extremely rare Blu-ray to find on the physical marketplace. And you won't find it for less than $130, $150 in its cheap original version. I would love a re-release. I would love it. If somebody would just get off their ass and re-release a bunch of John Hughes movies. Like, first of all, realize this is a damn John Hughes movie, and that there is, like, there are people out there that do enjoy it and do appreciate it. I feel like because it didn't do well in theaters, and because Siskel and Ebert didn't like it, that they just ignored it and left it alone. No, redo the damn movie. If I can buy, there are so many. Again, I will say this again. If I can buy a steelbook, a 4K steelbook of Howard the Duck, you can re-release Dutch. I'm not even asking for a 4K of Dutch. Just re-release the damn movie. I don't care if it's in Blu-ray or 4K format. It'd be great if it was in 4K format. But either way, just re-release the damn movie so that I can buy it for a sane price and not a batshit lunacy I need to be committed price. Like seriously, go on Amazon right now. $498.02. And there are other sellers that are selling it for like $150. There's another one that's selling it as a collectible, right? That's how they're justifying it. It's a collectible. Ultra rare, still factory sealed, but has a very small ding in the case art. Yeah, it's the plastic Amaray case, so that's not a small ding. The plastic is damaged. And he's selling it for $368. Ridiculous. But, that's what, wow, this is even $952.90. Somebody is selling it in like new condition for $952.90. Oh, it's the same guy. D. Wade Bookseller. He's selling another copy of it. It's outside of its original packaging, but it is in great shape. These people are insane. These people shouldn't be allowed to sell things. This is absolute lunacy. But yeah, that shows you how rare of a Blu-ray that it is. You can't buy it digitally either. Like I'm not even 100% certain where this movie is available without. I think you can buy it digitally, like on Amazon, but you got to pay like $9.99 or whatever for it. You can't rent it through Apple or like some of the other places. It's a very difficult movie to find, but it can be found. And whether you have to ride the high seas or not, you can totally find it. And it's definitely one that deserves a re-release. Ed O'Neill, Ethan Randall, now Ethan Embry because he changed his last name over the years. You'd know him from like Can't Hardly Wait and Vegas Vacation. Also That Thing You Do, which I haven't seen That Thing You Do, but Dave keeps bringing that up. That's a very good point because That Thing You Do is a movie that a decent amount of people have seen. It has Tom Hanks and others in it as well. Isn't Liv Tyler in that too? I think so. I'm not sure. But either way, that's Dutch. And I will definitely be talking about that and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles this week for Thanksgiving on Flight Review on patreon.com/theflightcast. So thank you for that, John. I hope you do find a way to see the movie and give it a try, if you will. See how you feel about it. If you like John Hughes movies, not everybody does. I understand that. It's not everybody's flavor. But either way, thank you as always for the feedback, good sir. Happy Thanksgiving, and we will see you on the other side of the holiday. All right, next up, Sam Otten sends an email in this week titled Warner Thoughts. I'm pretty sure he's not tying anything into the Saudi Arabia thing either. But he says, hey, Ray, thanks for your insights on the Warner Brothers possible sales situation. Thank you. I appreciate that. He says, you also mentioned the strength of the Warner Brothers catalog. I totally agree. I didn't realize how impressive the Warner Brothers catalog was until I was an adult, because when I was younger, I basically just watched movies and listened to music, but didn't track which studio or parent company was behind it. But as an adult, I became aware that a lot of my very favorite stuff was from Warner Brothers. Here's a sample of some of my favorites, all from Warner Brothers. Oh, this is quite a list, Sam. He says The Matrix, Mad Max Fury Road, Seven, Mystic River, Argo, Casablanca, Dumb and Dumber, Best in Show, so much DC Comics media, yeah, just about all of it, right? Various Stanley Kubrick films, including The Shining and Full Metal Jacket, yep. Various Alfred Hitchcock films, including Dial M for Murder and Strangers on a Train. Various Zack Snyder films, including 300 and Sucker Punch. Watchmen was also Warner Brothers. I don't know if that's on your list or not. Most Christopher Nolan films, including Inception and The Prestige. Yes, until recently, because Oppenheimer obviously was Universal, was it not? And I think that's also the case for The Odyssey coming out next year. Various Martin Scorsese films, including The Departed and Goodfellas. Yes, yes, indeed. The Harry Potter series. The Monsterverse films, he says. The Lego movies. Red Hot Chili Peppers. Green Day. Quincy Jones. Doobie Brothers. George Clinton and Funkadelic. Tom Petty. Alanis Morissette. The Office. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Big Bang Theory. And many more. Yep, that's all Warner Brothers. Everything he just listed there. Musical artists and movies and all Warner Brothers. Absolutely. 100%. He says there are also many of my favorites that were not originally produced by Warner Brothers but were later acquired or distributed by Warner Brothers, such as Lord of the Rings and North by Northwest and Psycho. Are there any of your particular favorites that I missed? I don't think so. I think you covered like just about all of it. I'd have to really think a little bit harder about that, in terms of studio movies. I mean, but this pretty much covers. Oh, the Ocean's movies. I do love the Ocean's trilogy. And I also love Ocean's 8. Warner Brothers did all of them. And I just recently read, like, the source of this originally was The Wrap, which is probably why I didn't see it initially, but Variety or somebody else picked it up. That apparently Andy Garcia was on some podcast or somewhere and said that they are developing Ocean's 14. They're going to do another one? And I'm like, okay, that'll be interesting. They'll have to, it'll be tricky. Like, I'm not against the idea of them doing it because I love the other four movies. But to me, it'll be tricky. You got to do it without Bernie. He's passed since. May he rest in peace. And Carl Reiner is also gone now. May he rest in peace. Right. And I think along those lines, like if you figure out who the other team members are, yes, you could totally do that. Then you'd also have to figure out what, or rather, where in the timeline it fits. Are you going to acknowledge Ocean's 8, or are you just going to leave that as an outlier because it's still connected, right? Like, there are three members of the original gang that are in that movie. So, like, would the 14th movie have happened after that? Would you even perhaps involve the women in that? Like, that I don't know. I'm not sure how they would do it. That would be cool. I really think that would be cool. Like if they did something where they brought Sandra Bullock and Kate Blanchett in and maybe they help make up the rest of the group for this particular one. I don't know. I'm not sure what the idea for that would be, but yeah, I'm not against it. But yeah, that would be Warner Brothers. That's definitely a Warner Brothers franchise as well. And a good amount of Soderbergh stuff is Warner Brothers as well. Wasn't Black Bag? Black Bag is Warner Brothers, I think. I could be wrong on that. Hang on. Let me look that up real quick. No, it was Focus. Pardon me, it was Focus Features. But that's the thing. Like Soderbergh's style, like I know he's done Warner Brothers movies, and his style, like it feels like Warner Brothers. Like just in terms of like how he does his films and whatnot. And he's done more than a few Warner Brothers movies, in addition to the Ocean's trilogy. Not the least of which is the very first Magic Mike movie, which I have not seen. I still have not seen that to this day. He also did Contagion, which is another one that I don't think I've seen that one. But also there was one. Did he do Kimmy? Kimmy was one that went straight to HBO Max. Yes, he did do that. That's starring Zoe Kravitz. I need to watch that. My goodness. Oh, also The Informant, which is a Matt Damon starring film. So yeah, he's done quite a few. So I would add a good portion of Steven Soderbergh's movies as well, or also Warner Brothers. Yeah, no, the library, the catalog for Warner Brothers is absolutely phenomenal. Like it's really second to none if we're talking about subjective quality, right? It's only second to Netflix in terms of actual like quantity, but subjective quality, I think it is absolutely on top as far as libraries are concerned, because even if you go back into the annals of Warner Brothers history and go back to all the classic films from way back when that they've preserved and that they put on, yeah, absolutely, without question. He says, I know that historically WB has had the reputation of being hands-off and letting the artist have creative freedom. I think that's what makes the Justice League debacle a slap in the face that goes well beyond just DC fans. The WB executives interfered with the DCEU, but they also ruined that reputation of letting artists have their freedom. Absolutely. Without question. It definitely reverberates even further than just what happened with the DCU and with DC fans. Because, yeah, they got producer happy, and the leadership at that time decided to completely nerf that tradition, and they followed Rotten Tomatoes scores, and they followed what people were saying about the MCU and the $1 billion grosses that they were getting, and they just said, no, we've got to take the high road, and they took it the easy, cheesy, chintzy way out, and they all paid for it, and unfortunately we paid for it as well. And if it weren't for their buffoonery, then we wouldn't be having the silliness right now with respect to like Snyderverse stuff and whatnot. But yeah, it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate, beyond just that scope of what they did to tarnish Warner Brothers' legacy with respect to that. He says, I will give credit to Warner Brothers, though, for even letting Man of Steel and BVS exist at all. I think I shared this years ago on the podcast, but I'm very confident that other studios would never have even put Man of Steel or BVS into production because they would have been afraid that it wasn't crowd-pleasing enough or not mainstream enough. Even though I have frustrations with WB, I will forever be thankful that they helped produce Man of Steel, BVS, and somehow we did end up getting Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yes, completely agree with that, Sam. He says, we have those films, and now whether it's with new ownership or not, I'm just thankful that we still have DC content coming out, and the more creative freedom that we can get, the better. Even if not everyone likes everything that comes out. Sam Otten. Yes, 1,000% agree with all of your sentiments there, Sam. And I do think that there's a great deal of truth to the idea that other studios would not have greenlit Man of Steel or BVS because of the concerns about it being crowd-pleasing and whatnot. And of course, the sad part about that, Sam, is that both of those movies combined for $1.5 billion. But because BVS didn't make $1 billion by itself, all of a sudden that means it's a massive disappointment. No, it's not true. Objectively speaking, from a data standpoint, BVS made Warner Brothers money, made Warner Brothers profit. We have the numbers to back this up, not just in terms of theatrical presentation, but also in terms of home media sales, home video sales. We brought all this up. You know this, Sam. You know, you have all these numbers just as we do. We've had all this data, this objective data for the last 9 years, proving that neither of those movies were failures whatsoever, and that the DCEU didn't start failing until the Justice League disaster occurred. And then from that point, after Aquaman, right, which was right after that, the entire rest of the DCEU was an abject disaster, complete failure, like as far as drumming up any type of hype, getting any people to try and watch any of the movies, any type of structure or plan or anything like that. It was awful. And even for the movies that I enjoy, and I enjoy to some degree all 15 of them, and I own all 15 of them, but I can recognize how absolutely batshit everything went, how, everything just completely went to hell, like after the Justice League disaster. So the minute they infringed upon their historical tradition of creative freedom and, went in a very disingenuous path for the rest of the DC universe to try and, make it MCU 2.0, that's what it was. It was an attempt at MCU 2.0 without understanding all the groundwork and without really, doing what was necessary to be done in terms of developing it. You could have done that. They could have done that, and they could have been successful with it, but they did not. They were very lazy, and they were very haphazard, and they were very ignorant and idiotic and incompetent with respect to how they did it. And that's why DC and Warner Brothers really was in the position that it was in. And now James Gunn and Peter Safran are taking it in a different direction and still showing the viability of DC content, fortunately. So we can be thankful for that as well. But as always, Sam, thank you for the email. Thank you for the feedback. Greatly appreciated indeed. And thank you for the kind words with respect to the insight that I'm glad I helped you. Glad I helped others with respect to insight on the whole Warner Brothers deal and the process as it is going forward. All right, now it's time for the email that I was prefaced with, or warned about, if you will, and that is from Mr. Philip Barker. I was on Vodka Stream with him the other night, and he mentioned that there was an email in my inbox, and he said it had to do with nostalgia and whatnot. And he said that the title would be. He said the title would be hilarious to me, to the sense where I needed to read. I read it like not on the show, not on Vodka Stream, but I immediately had to open my email and see exactly what the title was. The title in question of this email is "I heard you were a few clowns short of a circus," which that's Deathstroke. That's Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke, which did come up in conversation that night, among other things, on Vodka Stream. So yeah, that's Joe Manganiello's Deathstroke at the end of Zack Snyder's Justice League talking to Lex Luthor. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see what the tone of Phillips' email is with that title, but let's get into it. He says, "Hey Ray, I heard the words Pokemon games, so of course I had to chime in." Oh yes, you know what? I did absolutely. Pokemon, yes, that's Phil's bat signal. Anybody mentions Pokemon, he's got to talk about it without question, and we wouldn't have it any other way here. He says to answer John's question regarding why the Pokemon Company hasn't put the mainline Game Boy Advance games on their NSO service or the eShop is because when they did this on the 3DS eShop, the digital versions of the games didn't sell nearly as many copies as they did physically when they released originally. Yes, this includes red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, crystal. There are several reasons why the mainline games haven't and probably won't be on the eShop or the NSO service, and it ultimately boils down to these things. He says it's the Virtual Console argument, Pokemon Home compatibility, and Nintendo and the Pokemon Company and Creatures Inc. He says first there's the Virtual Console argument. In 2016, TPC decided to put red, blue, and yellow on the Nintendo eShop for 2DS and 3DS at $9.99. In 2017, they did the same with Gold and Silver, with Crystal releasing on the eShop in January 2018. The Nintendo Switch was released in 2017, just months before this, he adds. In April of 2016, he says the digital sales reflected by the first three games were 1.5 million. However, when Red and Blue were originally released, they sold 31 million in the US alone in 1998. I often see people ask and how Nintendo to put the Generation 3 games, he says, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green on the service, and I just look at the previous numbers and flatly say the demand for these games to be on the service is just not there. Next, he says, is compatibility with the latest transfer bank service, Pokemon Home. This service came into play in February of 2020. It is a cloud service that allows the home and transfer of Pokemon from game to game, but not every game. Pokemon Home is essentially what allows people to transfer Pokemon caught from Pokemon Go to other Nintendo Switch Pokemon games like Let's Go, Pikachu, Eevee, Sword, Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, Legend Arceus, and Scarlet and Violet. However, he says when this service became the dominant transfer method over Pokemon Bank Transporter for the 3DS, TPC soon announced that Pokemon Bank and Transporter would no longer be used to move Pokemon from pre-existing games, Generations 3 and 7, and users must move their Pokemon to home before the eShop closes on 3DS systems in 2023, which it did. That almost sounds like Ultraviolet going dark from, I'm trying to relate this because I don't play Pokemon. I'm trying to relate this to like my own thing. Ultraviolet was a service that used to do digital movie library transfers and they shut down, but we were told that we needed to keep it connected to Movies Anywhere in order to not lose the library like that we had through Ultraviolet, the codes that were redeemed under it, if I'm not mistaken, something to that effect. But it did shut down. It sounds like a similar thing, maybe. Phil says there's been much speculation about whether or not Pokemon Home would work in synergy with the older games that, in theory, could end up on Switch. But the real problem isn't the older games, it's the newer ones, he says. Currently, no Pokemon are allowed to be transferred to or from Legends Z to A to Pokemon Home. It will receive home support early next year. This is likely due to the battle mechanic changes or something else. Regardless, he says TPC designed Pokemon Home to function with the current Nintendo hardware as well as smartphones, not older hardware or software. It would be like trying to play a PS1 game physically on a PS5. It just doesn't register the data correctly. Okay, I get that. He says, lastly, it also boils down to the fact that Nintendo is its own company that supports Pokemon. Yes, Pokemon started as primarily a Nintendo franchise, but now it's its own company and IP unto itself as well. Pokemon, the brand, is co-owned by Nintendo, Creatures Inc., and the Pokemon Company. While Nintendo owns Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong, Metroid, and many others outright, they do not own Pokemon outright. Therefore, they do not develop all the games or have oversight or say in terms of research or development, which largely falls under Game Freak. which is exactly why Nintendo has no problem dumping its entire library of games onto an online subscription service, because I already made the money on those games years ago. Between the two reasons I listed earlier, he says, the Pokemon Company just doesn't see the value in putting older games on their service when you can obtain the vast majority of Pokemon in current Nintendo Switch titles or Pokemon Go, as the previous sales of the digital copies of RBY/GSC proved to be fruitless. To put those games onto the current Switch market, he says, would be nothing more than nostalgia. There we go. And that didn't work for them already. Sure, I wouldn't mind playing Pokemon Crystal on my Switch, he says, but I'm having way too much fun playing Legend Z-A, the game they just made. Long story short, Phil says TPC doesn't see value in older games. However, retro game stores do. He says, oh man, I don't remember the last time I wrote in, but I couldn't help myself. Pokemon is my jam. As I said, I am currently playing the latest game. I've been putting up shorts of all the shiny Pokemon I've gotten, and I even made a video about where to hunt one in particular. Getting ready to make another video for another one as I type this, among other things. This is honestly where a lot of my focus has been going, and frankly, it's relaxing. I occasionally see the nonsense on threads about other things, our friends in our circles, so I may as well chime in on some of that stuff while I'm here too. Well, first of all, thank you for the in-depth analysis of Pokemon and answering John's question, because that was a very comprehensive answer, and definitely gave us all the insight. For those of us who didn't know and didn't understand where you were going, and now I understand exactly what you meant with respect to nostalgia the other night. So very well done with respect to that. Very helpful. Hopefully, John and others that have that question and have hounded Nintendo about the older titles not being on the service understand your reasoning and understand everything that you just explained. It makes perfect sense. It makes perfect business sense that the Pokemon Company wouldn't think that there's any value to putting those games in the service as opposed to other means. Totally makes sense from a business standpoint. Completely get it. Even as somebody that doesn't play Pokemon, I can understand the business aspects that you are raising here. But all right, let's get to your other stuff that you're talking about here. You said, I love that Zack Snyder has made an Instagram account to not only promote The Last Photograph, but he's filling it out with pictures from all his other movies. I did watch Zack Snyder's Justice League on the 17th. Man, what an incredible piece of cinema history that film is, right? It remains one of, if not my favorite, superhero film ever made. Then again, that's a hot take depending on who you talk to or who you write for, lol. Of course, both sides of people for or against him will rush to their scoopy headlines. But honestly, I just have to laugh, he says. Especially with all the chatter of who may end up being the new owner / co-owner / whatever of Warner Bros. Discovery and DC Studios. People are entitled to how they want to feel, but to believe that an entire other country is going to purchase a movie studio to have one guy return to finish 2 movies is absurd, to be polite. Look, I really don't give an F where DC Studios ends up, he says. Just make a Batman family movie and I'll be content. Everything else depends on who's working on what. Yeah, I completely understand. And yeah, the marketing that Zack Snyder, we haven't talked a whole lot about this, but the marketing that Zack Snyder is employing, the grassroots marketing with The Last Photograph, is phenomenal, because he understands, and we talked about this in Vox from the other night as well, he understands that all he has to do is pop up on social media, post anything, and it will attract thousands. It will. It will absolutely get the attention. Scooper Madness will be waiting. The blogs will be waiting. Culture Crave, Discussing Film, all of those, Fandom Wire, Nerdist, they'll all be waiting to see what he says. Collider, Screen Rant, they're all waiting. Hey, what's Zach posting about now? What are they? Because they know it gets eyeballs. They know it gets attention. They know it's a hot button subject. His name is just one that gets attention on social media. It demands the attention on social media. And so he knows this, and he's using it to his advantage. And I really hope it works out for him. I do. I hope that it gets eyeballs in The Last Photograph that otherwise wouldn't be there, and hopefully the press tours are not bombarded with so many questions about DC and whether he'd do another DC film or whether he wants the whole... Don't ask him about the Saudi Arabia thing. Don't ask him about the Snyderverse stuff. Hopefully there won't be too many of those dumb questions. Some idiot is going to ask him about those for sure, but hopefully not too much, and he can continue on his other work that he is currently doing in that regard. And yeah, I've already talked about how, again, listen, like the breakdown that I had on Wednesday, which, Phil, I think you did listen to that, and others I know have listened to it as well. But just my whole thing, I have laid out what I think are the best and worst case scenarios for who buys Warner Brothers Discovery. The best case ultimately is that Warner Brothers doesn't get sold and that it remains, That's the best case scenario for us. Like as far as the art form, is that Warner Brothers remains its own autonomous entity, whether it splits into streamers and studios and Discovery Global or not. That's our best case scenario with respect to this. But it's likely not going to happen. It likely will be purchased by one of the other three entities. And I have said that the best case scenario is Paramount. Paramount is the best case scenario at this point because you won't lose theatrical like you would with Netflix. You won't lose home media like you would with Netflix, right? And the Ellisons, people all scared shitless about their politics and where they lean. At the end of the day, the one percenters care about money. I cannot stress this enough. David Zaslav is a red hat. David Zaslav is a red hat. And yet he's the one that formed DC Studios, hired James Gunn and Peter Safran, and did a public victory lap for Superman at the same time that Fox News was calling it super woke. These people only care about the money that gets made. They don't care how they make the money. They just care that the money is there. And as long as Gunn and Safran are making the Ellisons money, they will leave him alone. Or he will leave them alone, I should say. The Ellisons will leave Gunn and Safran alone in that regard. Plain and simple. As long as the DC was making money, regardless of what storytelling they do. They can have as many female writers and directors. They can have as many people of color, minorities, whatever. They can do whatever they want. They can spoof Fox News, whomever. It does not matter. The money is what matters to them, bar none. And they need the content as well to make the money in order to compete with Netflix. Universal would be the same thing. It really would. Perhaps there may be some changes with respect to the DCU marketing and whatnot, because if Universal were to get it, we'd certainly be talking about the possibility. In fact, it would be a virtual certainty that, they'd be like, okay, how can we make a Metropolis or a Gotham City Universal Studios? That would happen, right? Like, I wouldn't even, it's not even speculation. I feel like that would be a foregone conclusion if Universal were to get a hold of Warner Brothers and have the DC pantheon underneath that. Netflix is your worst case scenario for what I mentioned earlier. You lose your theatrical, and not completely, but it would be severely restricted, and you lose your home media because they want everybody watching all of the movies on their streaming service. That's their primary bread and butter. And they're not good at handling brands because they have no experience in handling brands. So all the people, that's where the cultists look even dumber, because all the people that are like, sell Warner Brothers to Netflix, you don't understand what you're losing. You don't understand what the industry and what fans and what we as the audience are losing if something like that happens. And I'm somebody that has defended Netflix as the godfather of streaming, but not when we're talking about buying a studio, not when we're talking about taking control of a brand, not when we're talking about handling something like DC Comics, DC Studios. No, absolutely not. Certainly not. They are good for streaming. They're good for making their own streaming content, but release windows. Imagine this. Imagine what if the Creature Commandos or Lanterns is a Netflix show and it gets canceled after a season because it didn't hit massive numbers in that opening weekend. It didn't do Squid Game numbers or Stranger Things numbers or Queen's Gambit numbers or whatnot in that opening weekend. They're like, well, it didn't work out for us. We're gonna have to move on to something else. You want to see that canceled? All the people that are pissy about Netflix shows getting canceled after a season or two, you want to see that happen in DC shows? I think the hell not. No, we don't want to see that. So yeah, Netflix by far worst case scenario in this regard. But so I would very much care if that was the case. But like I said, I think Paramount's in the pole position. I think Paramount's going to take it. I think they are in the scenario where it's going to get sold no matter what. Paramount is the best case scenario, in my humble opinion. All right, continuing with the rest of Phil's email, he says, and then there's the Superman, Lex Luthor, Man of Tomorrow. There we go. That's what it's called. Brainiac, right? At least that's what Scooper Duper Dumberto said. Scooper Duper Dumberto. Nice. He says, I guess if it wasn't obvious enough with the giant brain on the front of the script or something. Look, in all seriousness, if it's true and Brainiac is the villain of the movie, I'll just say I wish it were someone else doing the film. The idea of a James Gunn Brainiac villain in a Superman movie after watching his first Superman movie, no less, just makes me queasy. And now I know how it feels to be anti-Zack Snyder, except it's in regard to James Gunn, he says. Rather, I would if I spent day after day complaining about that very aspect on social media and made it my whole personality. But this is not news to you, Ray. You probably had an idea of how I would feel provided this news is true. We don't know, though. Certainly Dumberto doesn't. We know he doesn't. Time will tell, as it tends to. Yeah, and I actually agree, Phil, with what Ben was saying a couple weeks ago when this first came up. My issue wasn't so much the idea of Brainiac being the ultimate villain in this film, because I have said for years that he's overdue, like as far as being a Superman villain portrayed on screen, right? Look, I have no disrespect whatsoever for either Terrence Stamp's Zod, may he rest in peace, or certainly not Michael Shannon's Zod, which I think is still arguably the best villain in comic book shared universe history. Yes, I do think he's a better villain than Thanos. We can have that discussion later with respect to his villainy compared to Thanos' villainy, right? But even with all that, and even with the Doomsday stuff and everything else, it's like Brainiac is just one of those villains where, and I don't know, like I don't have like extensive like experience in Brainiac as a villain from the comics, but from what I've seen in Superman the animated series, and certainly what I saw in Krypton with Blake Ritson's version, like how has this villain not been done on screen? How come the closest we have to a cinematic version of Brainiac as a villain is Gus Gorman's supercomputer in Superman 3? Ugh, that's just disgusting when you think about that in that regard, from a fan perspective, that is. So yeah, and Ben said that we can make a logical progression, a logical, like, we can suspect, we can presume that Brainiac, we can speculate. I keep the word speculate for whatever reason is not a word that sticks in my brain these days, but we can speculate that Brainiac is the villain because, like you said, the brain on the front page of the script treatment that Gunn posted out, the fact that we know that Lex is going to team up with Superman against another entity and he's going to have the green suit. Like, we know, we can speculate as fans that Brainiac is who they're fighting. The problem that I had is that it's not confirmed. Dumberto said confirmed, right? Like the rap said confirmed. No, not confirmed. Not confirmed. Not confirmed until James Gunn confirms it himself. We can speculate all we want. We can go back to the Making a Superman documentary where there were the transitions and people saw on one of the storyboards that they used in that documentary that Brainiac was like you saw the 3 circles at the bottom, right? Like there's all sorts of hints that we can speculate that Brainiac is a villain. Brainiac may very well be the ultimate villain of the film. We don't know that yet. It's not confirmed yet. And no one gets a cookie or a gold star or like extra points, or extra gas in their gas tank or something. You don't get a benefit for being right about it before it was confirmed or being right about it soonest. No, it's bullshit. There's no urgency to this. It's on their pace whenever they wish to do so. We know what release date the movie has. We know that it's in pre-production now. Like I said, Gunn posted pictures of new storyboards for Man of Tomorrow that he said are going to go up under review for the others this week, right? He posted that now, like today. We know that this thing's going to get going as far as filming next year, right? So we can wait. We can be patient. That's the problem, the impatience. And that's what the rap and Scooper Madness and all these others prey on, is our impatience. You've got to know now. You've got to be first to know. We're the first ones to tell you. No, you're not. You're the first ones to speculate. You're the first ones because you have a platform like the rap, because you're Scooper Madness, you think that you have some authority. You really don't. People give you false authority that you don't deserve, but because it comes from you and you've been wrong twice a day like a freaking broken clock, right? And a day in this case would be like a year or two, right? Like it, because you have some limited, like, oh, we got this right, we got that right. In certain cases, shadowed or covered and shrouded in lies, where you've gotten things completely wrong a good portion of the time. You think that you could just manipulate everybody and say, oh, this is confirmed, we know this is happening. No, you're making the same educated, speculated guess that we're making, but there's nothing confirmed whatsoever. Not until Gunn himself or Safran himself confirms it. So even if Brainiac gets confirmed and Dumberto does his whole victory lap, no, absolutely not. You didn't know shit. You just saw the writing on the wall that anybody else with any intelligence that's connected to the situation could reason out, could make a speculation on, and you just decided to put it in stone early. Okay, so you made a good bet. You made a wise bet, but it's not confirmed. That's what really pissed me off about that. It wasn't confirmed. It's not confirmed in that regard. So yeah, but like you said, Phil, time will tell, as it always tends to. No doubt about that. He says, staying in the Warner Brothers sphere, I know we've chatted about this on the vodka stream, but I'll just say that Welcome to Derry is the best thing on television right now. It is firing on all cylinders, and I couldn't be more thrilled with how this series is being fleshed out as the long-standing origin of Pennywise that is rooted in the interludes and subsidiary elements of the It novel by Stephen King. There are a few familiar faces in this series, and one you would recognize from a previous HBO DC show, and another from another DC show. And these two work together, and it's awesome. Highly recommend. I think I know who it is that you're talking about. There's one for sure that worked on a previous DC show, the one that you're talking about from another DC show. Yes, I do know who that person is, and he's awesome. As long as we're talking about the same individual, that person is awesome, and I'm glad to see him in this show. As far as the previous HBO DC show, well, that could be a couple of different things. I'm just curious here, just for my own. I'm not going to say it out loud. But while I do see another DC show actor in here, I don't see an HBO DC show actor, unless it's from a more obscure one. Maybe even one that I did talk about on DC TV Squadcast back in the day. I don't know. But here's the thing. I looked this up because I want to see how many episodes it is and how many are left. So with definitely avoiding spoilers as best as I can see that there are 4 episodes left. There's another one that's actually releasing tonight as the time you're recording this, because I am again recording this episode on a Sunday. So there's another one coming out tonight, and then the last one is on December 14th. So there is a chance, there is a possibility, if I get my shit together, I could actually get caught up on this. Because I've seen the It movies. Like I've mentioned before, like my renaissance into horror, if you will, kind of started with this. Because Scott wanted to watch the It movies when we were doing Fans Without Borders Plus stuff that Brent won't watch for the Patreon over at Squadcast Media. He wanted to watch those movies, and I said, okay, this is my opportunity. I'll try those. And after trying that and Dr. Sleep as well the next month, I decided, oh, okay, I actually do like these. And if this is in the same vein, with the same type of character development, the same type of, like circumstances, if you will, if Welcome to Derry is anything like those movies, then I will probably enjoy it. I probably will like it. So there's 4 episodes left, counting the one that is revealing tonight. And then the last one is on December 14th. Okay, this is something to consider. This wasn't on, I knew of this show, but it wasn't on my radar to necessarily talk about. But this is something to consider. I've got some time here. We're halfway through. All right, because this is going to be, 8 total episodes? All right. So, recommendation taken and noted, Phil. I may look into this. Seriously, I may try to look into this for sure. Very high praise that you have given the film. So how about this? He says, I haven't seen Predator, Badlands, or Running Man yet, but I intend to see the latter sometime next week, either before or after Thanksgiving. You already know I have no desire to see Avatar Fire and Ash come December. No, I think my holidays will be spent just making more Pokemon-related content, among other things. Hopefully this reaches you well. Looking forward to the next round of flight chats, and we'll see what happens with that new Star Trek film. Curious to see where it ends up going and how far. Much love and respect as always. Philip Barker. Phil, as always, return the love and respect indeed, and thank you for the feedback. I don't know if you're into the Predator franchise, but I would recommend Badlands. Badlands was good. Ignore all the noise about, oh, it's PG-13, I can't believe. No, it didn't. It's a movie that you're going to watch and go, well, if they just added blood, it would have been rated R. It absolutely. That's precisely how Dan Trachtenberg did the film. So people that are so hopped up on that, it's just another, lazy, nitpicky fan complaint, without looking at the actual scope and scale of the movie and what that movie does to build out the Predator lore. If you're into Predator, I don't know if you're into Alien and Predator. I don't know that we've talked a whole lot about that franchise as of yet. But Running Man, what I would say about Running Man, and you probably already know this, and we said this also the other night on Vodka Stream, I would just reiterate that when you see Running Man, Phil, do not, I repeat, do not think of the Arnold movie. It is not the Arnold movie. No, this is straight from King's novel that he wrote when he was under the pen name Richard Bachman in the 80s. This is, and the other thing, like I talked about in my review, which ended up being, pretty spoiler free at the end of the day, is that a lot of the world that King wrote in the 80s, half of it is scarily real now. It's not so much of a satire or so much of a warning, a dystopian warning, because half the shit that happens in that story is happening in our real world right now. So it's oh, great. Okay. And that was just kind of chilling to watch that movie with that lens and in that vein. But hey, when you watch it, please send in your responses. Let me know what you think about that. I would dearly like to know what you think of the new Running Man. Just don't go into it thinking Arnold. No, it is not like the Arnold film. It is not a redux of that whatsoever. It is much closer. It is straight derived from the King novel. Absolutely. It is not a redux of the Arnold film. So don't be thinking of in those terms. It is much closer to the original source material in that regard. So definitely looking forward to hearing what you're thinking about that. As far as Avatar goes, look, at some point I would like to see Fire and Ash. I do like the first Avatar film. It's been a long time since I've watched it all the way through. One day in the not too distant future, I'm going to do a rewatch of that film, and then I will also finally watch The Way of Water, because even though I own both films, I blind bought the second one. I haven't watched it. I haven't sat down to watch it. And look, there's not much to the Avatar movies, okay? It's Pocahontas plus Fern Gully with a dash of Smurfs. That's absolutely what it is. It's not an original story. It's not anything we haven't seen already done. And yes, you could certainly argue that we've seen that particular story done about natives versus, the evil white people and the evil corporations. We've seen that done many, many times, and we've seen it done better many, many times. I'm not saying that that's the case, but people watch Avatar for James Cameron's visual spectacle and whatnot. I don't think they watch it for the story, right? It's not like the story is necessary. I mean, maybe the story does grip some people, but I think it is really just a visual feast that people watch those movies for, and it is not for everyone, and it is not. People are not required. If you're a fan of movies, you're not required to watch the Avatar movies whatsoever. It is all subjective in that regard. So I get it. I totally understand that. So for sure, we'll see how that goes. It's kind of also how I feel a little bit about Wicked, although I do want to try the Wicked movies, especially, understanding now that they are not connected to the Wizard of Oz at all, because I own the Wizard of Oz and I grew up on the Wizard of Oz film. And to know that the musical and that the whole Wicked thing is really, it's like an alternate reality. It's almost like a Kelvin timeline, if you will, for the Wizard of Oz. It's like, okay, all right, I could definitely, like, knowing that and not waiting, like, because that'd be the problem. If I didn't know that going in, then I'd be waiting for, okay, well, when is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? How does this explain this? Like connecting to the original L. Frank Baum story that was adapted. And it's like, no, don't do that. Don't wait for that. Treat it as a separate adaptation, which I will. So at some point, I'll probably dive into that as well. Just keeping everything open on my end. But of course, Phil, thank you for the feedback as always. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the other side of the holiday, good sir. All right, next up, Stu Little chimes in this week with an email titled AVP Amalgam Visions Powell. Oh, okay. All right. Nice play on that. But funny enough, he starts off that way, and he did this on purpose because he says, hello, first off, Predator Badlands rules. Nice little play on that, he says. I love when a genre movie can commit to itself and not be so worried about four-quadrant appeal, even though I think it does have that. But because it's good and makes smart choices and not just arbitrary focus-tested ones to check off a list, it's a violent, action-packed space opera sci-fi actioner where the closest thing to a human character is an android who is legless for 3/4 of the film. That's a damn good point. He's absolutely right. Yes, there's a cute mascot pet character, but it ends the movie less cute and biting a dude's head off, so not the same thing. It takes a contemporary horror monster movie and makes it into a compelling protagonist without really violating established rules of said character. It's a fun counterpoint to Prey. As well as a more heightened and crowd-pleasing version of the story, it still has some parallels with sibling-related family stuff, with there even being a callback to a line from the former movie, which I still need to see. That did not work out the way I wanted to. It never works out the way I want to. Anyway, he says the light alien connections were done well too, and intentionally or not, they actually managed to make Weyland Yutani align with the recent versions in the franchise, as their interest in the catalyst for its regenerative ability fits with how Prometheus and Alien Romulus has made the company's interest in alien life forms be about chasing immortality as well as finding weapons. Good stuff. All right, so there were light spoilers in what Stu just said. Light spoilers. Nothing like fundamentally in terms of like the plot of the film. Just a few elements here and there, but I largely agree with him. And again, I haven't seen Prey yet. I also have not watched Alien Earth, and I haven't watched Romulus. I'm behind on the franchise. But one thing that he did say, in terms of taking it from a contemporary horror movie monster and making it into a compelling protagonist, it's like, here's the thing. To me, I feel like Predator has always been sci-fi. I realize that like the first two movies, maybe even Predators, was really focused on the idea of making it a monster movie, if you will. But honestly, it is sci-fi. I know that there's horror elements to it, and it's this and that, and they did that in the 80s and the 90s, but the Predator is the sci-fi franchise. I would also say the same for Aliens. I know that Aliens, yes, there are definitely horror elements to that as well, but I really do feel like it's combined AVP is a sci-fi franchise. A sci-fi franchise with horror elements, right? Certainly in terms of space opera. Absolutely, which I would agree this one certainly is in that regard. No, it's really good. Badlands is really good. And I do at some point want to go back and fully get caught up on. I should just get caught up on all of them, like the Predator and the Alien movies. This is what I mean when I say there's too much shit to watch. There's just too much shit to watch. But either way, glad that you enjoyed Badlands as much as many of the rest of us did, Stu. He says the DC Marvel collaborations continue with the release of Batman Deadpool 1. The follow-up to Deadpool Batman 1. Comic numbering is weird. So Batman Deadpool number 1 and then Deadpool Batman 1. Okay. But not before earlier this month we got the surprise release of 2 other standalone digital crossovers, he says. The Flash Fantastic Four is on DC Universe, and Thor Shazam is on Marvel Unlimited. Both are available to read for free on their respective platform for a limited time, and the Thor Shazam one can be permanently added to your Unlimited library by redeeming a code. Interesting. Flash F4 starts with Grodd mind-controlling Barry to help him try to steal the Force technology before getting more fantastical, and the other comic seeing Thor's power and memory being taken by a villain and a more classic version of Billy Batson. They actually call him Captain Marvel in this one, helping him. They're both good bite-sized reads and logical pairings with Flash and the Four's high-concept sci-fi leanings and Thor Shazam's fantasy ones. All right? Again, because of the whole, I mentioned this before, I think I did, we got the whole crossover where if you were a member of one service, you got a free code for a free 30 days to the other service. So being a DC Universe Infinite member, I got the free code to Marvel Unlimited. I just need to, sit down and read these things. I need to do that. I totally intended on doing that not too long ago, but I just need to sit down and do that and, stop bullshitting in that regard. But he says Deadpool Batman's titular story, while its proper title is The Cosmic Kiss Caper, is written by Grant Morrison with art by Dan Mora. While the previous team-up was a more grounded affair by Batman standards, this one goes for typical Morrison's surreal touches and metafictional fun with Batman and Deadpool, locked in a familiar but shifting reality working to uncover the culprit, who's a pretty cool choice for villain that justifies the weirdness of the tale. There's also a fun spin on previous DC Marvel crossovers with the appearance of the Supreme Beings, anthropomorphic representations of the DC and Marvel universes who interact in the background of the story in a humorous way. Also, in comparison to the previous story, which was based on a kind of textbook Batman with familiar elements like Wayne Manor, Alfred, who is deceased in current comics. What? Alfred's dead in the current comics run? Oh, that's disheartening, but all right. Commissioner Gordon and so on, he says. This one is definitely more recent Batman, with an up-to-date bluer costume and Damian appearing as his Robin to get irked by Wade referring to him as Mini-Me. As a Mini-Me. Yeah, I can see that. I can hear Damian being like irritated with that right now. He says the two leads once again work well together in their odd couple dynamic, though this time around, Batman is a little less contemptuous of Wade's presence and even has a bit of fun riling him up with Deathstroke comparisons. Okay, I like that. I like hearing about that because, yes, definite comparisons between the two. This is the first time Morrison has written Deadpool, as far as I know, he says, and their penchant for breaking the fourth wall blends very well with the character's MO, and the climax of the story plays off of that very well. On art, Dan Mora, who's kind of the big A-list penciler in DC right now, is a great fit for the splashy and colorful pop art visuals of the story. Overall, we're 2 for 2 on this pairing, delivering great tales, he says. The second story, a magician walks into a universe, written by James Tynion IV, Joshua Williamson, and Scott Snyder, art by Hayden Sherman, sees the magics of DC and Marvel entangled in a dangerous way, and John Constantine paying a visit to the Sanctum Sanctorum to get some assistance from Doctor Strange. Being Constantine, though, he says, his idea of assistance has an underlying agenda. This is very much a character piece of the two magic users' contrasting natures, with John viewing his down-and-dirty style of the occult as being the more appropriate approach to this problem than the cosmic lights and doodads of Strange's world. Strange shows John his misapprehension of the state of things, and they end up working pretty well to fix the issue. The lack of action in this part of the story is complemented by some bonus crossovers as we see the entanglement leading to battles between Mephisto and Neron, as well as Swamp Thing and Ghost Rider while this is going on. I would be curious about that. I tried Hellblazer Rebirth and I did not care for it. I did not care for it at all. And I get a little worried when you talk about how the lack of action is complemented by some bonus crossovers. It's like, well, there wasn't a whole lot of action in Hellblazer Rebirth either. That doesn't mean I'm going to care for it, truthfully. And I don't know who wrote that. I forget who wrote Hellblazer Rebirth. Stu, I'm sure you know. I'm sure many others reading or listening to this know. But yeah, as long as it's not like that, then okay, I would be willing to like give it a shot. But if it's like Hellblazer Rebirth, I'm probably not going to care for it because I really didn't care for the 8 or 9 issues of that I read, to be honest with you. Maybe I would feel differently about it now because it was some years ago that I read it, but either way, we'll see. He says Sticks and Snicks was up next from Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo. This is my favorite story, he says, after the main one of this collection, and sees Nightwing and Laura Kinney Wolverine teaming up to find Laura's missing sister. Taylor had lengthy runs on both characters, so he nails the dynamic between them as they trade details about their respective upbringings and relate over following in the footsteps of their dads. That sounds intriguing. Nightwing and Laura Kinney Wolverine. All right. Harley and Hulk's Amazing Saturday by Mariko Tamaki and Amanda Connor is a simple cartoony tale of Harley Quinn enjoying a chili dog only to get swept up in Hulk rampaging after a runaway robot, much to his nonverbal annoyance at her tagging along. Very wordy. Here we go. New Friends in Old Places by G. Willow Wilson and Dennis Cowan is the finale. And I think this could have used a couple more pages to really flesh out its premise of Static and Ms. Marvel being individually overwhelmed by family and having the excuse of a superhero incident to rush off to leading to them meeting each other and becoming friends. As it is, it's okay, but I think there was a potential for a little more to it. All in all, I'm still very happy with the issue and still amazed that we got this publishing initiative between the two companies with more to look forward to with Superman, Spider-Man next year and maybe more surprise drops like the 2 digital comics this month. Yeah, I think this is satisfying. It's scratching the crossover itch that people have, clandestinely been talking about for years, right? Like, this is a thing. It's always in the back of people's minds. It's like, okay, crossover this, crossover that, crossover what? Crossover who? Like that type of thing. Like, people are always curious about what happens when you get these characters together, and they're so prominent now in mainstream, right? With the MCU and with whatever people thought of the DCEU and what they think now of the DCU as that develops, right? Like, it's so much in the mainstream media that surely, there are those of us as fans. It's like, okay, what if we were general audience, and what if we didn't think of them all as being in the same world? Because a lot of the general audience doesn't separate between Marvel and DC and just treats them all as superheroes and just think that they do all inhabit the same world. And there are people out there asking, when is Spider-Man going to join the Justice League and when is Aquaman going to join the Avengers? These are real questions that I've brought up many times before that my old boss used to ask in that regard. So, yeah, intriguing. That last one that you talked about, New Friends in Old Places, G. Willow Wilson and Dennis Cowan, I like the idea of pairing Static and Ms. Marvel because, of course, what is that? That's representation matters, absolutely. And I would love to see the cultural significance of both of those characters together in a story like that. Really, all these stories sound interesting, to be honest with you. So this definitely is something that should be on the radar. But, just as much as there's too much shit to watch for me, there's also too much shit to read. There's a lot. There's a whole lot. Where do you begin? What do you do? How do you start whittling away at it? I don't know. I have no idea. But thank you for the recommendations, comic-wise. He says this email is already running long. Yeah, a little bit, but it is what it is. So I'll try to be briefer with this next one, he says. Star Wars Visions Season 3 has released. What? It has? Really? Okay, so they made 3 seasons of Star Wars Visions. All right, fair enough. He says, and like the first season's anthology, we're back to Japanese anime studios handling things for their animated shots, several of which are sequels to Season 1 entries. If you recall my previous reviews of Star Wars animated anthologies, you know I have a certain issue, he says, with the franchise's obsession with putting Jedi, Sith, and Force users in general into so much of their output. Thankfully, Season 3 addresses this, he says, and is a bit more varied in what it covers, and even the stuff that's Force-focused is very enjoyable, perhaps because of the creative freedom given to the writing. Like how the Ronin short The Duel Payback casts a red lightsaber-wielding ex-Sith as the anti-hero protagonist against a villain who's a vengeance-driven zealot Jedi Master. We also get more stories on rebels, bounty hunters, smugglers, treasure-hunting kids, and cute droids. Visually, it's all very lovely, and in the English dub, a good assortment of names, actors lend their voices, like Stephanie Shu Anna Sawai, Ronnie Ching, Simu Liu, Masaoka, Jodie Turner-Smith. No, it's not an Acolyte tie-in. Damn. Freddie Highmore and Steve Buscemi, as well as solid voice acting talent in general. Nothing against Jodie Turner-Smith. I would love for that to have been an Acolyte tie-in, but it is what it is. 3 seasons of Star Wars Visions. Yep. Too much shit to watch. Okay. He says, finally, we come to my 49th movie watched in theater this year. I may end up averaging 1 per week by the end of December. Edgar Wright's new version of The Running Man. All right. What did he think about it? He says, let's just say new version, as there's some debate to whether we class this as a remake or just a new adaptation. It's not a remake. It's not. There is no debate as far as I'm concerned, Stu. It's not a remake. It's a new version. Not only that, it's an adaptation of the original novel, right? Not the whatever the Arnold movie was in that regard. And I do enjoy the Arnold movie. I don't want to make it seem like I don't enjoy that movie. I own that film. But this is nothing like that. And people need to really come to grips with that, truthfully, with respect to the discussion around this one. He says there is a very unmistakable shout out to the previous cinematic adaptation. Yes, there is. And also one part where Ben Richards says, I'll be back, but I'm not sure if that was an intentional homage or not. Did he say I'll be back, or did he say something that sounded like I'll be back? Because I was listening for that as well, and I don't remember exactly if that is what he said. It might have been, truthfully, but yeah. But I'm with you. If he did say that, I don't know if that was an intentional homage or not either. He says, I'm surprised at how middling the reaction seems to have been towards the movie because I enjoyed it a lot and thought it was both a fun blockbuster and a pretty relevant sci-fi musing on some real-life issues. Yeah, you got that right. I'd also like to briefly talk about how in the discussion of this, I've seen a bit of people throwing shade at the 87 version as just some dumb action movie when I still think it holds up as more than that, with its topics of dumbing down and sensationalizing of entertainment, the media being used to promote false narratives and propaganda, and military institutions being deployed against U.S. citizens, all things that are in the new one. In fact, one of the few things the new one doesn't have is the genius casting of a real-life game show host as the villain, but that character being split into 2 characters of Josh Brolin as ruthless executive Killian and Coleman Domingo as charismatic as F. Bobby T is a good substitute. Honestly, I don't think I think it's more than a good substitute, Stu. I like that better. And part of the reason I like it better is because I feel like if they tried to get a game show host, like Steve Harvey from Family Feud, or, maybe, or Jane Lynch from, The Weakest Link or something like that, or Hollywood Game Night in the past, I feel like it just would have been too on the nose. The reason Richard Dawson worked in the 80s, the Arnold Running Man movie, is because he was really just playing a hyper-stylized version of who he was in real life. And if you watched episodes of Family Feud, if you heard the dude talk in real life, you'd know that. He got away with a lot of shit that would have put him in jail. Like, if he did it today, in today's climate in that regard. So, that made sense as far as, his attitude and how he was there. I would not say the same for Josh Brolin or Coleman Domingo. So the idea of them separating them and going closer to the original source material, I'm big on that. I actually like that choice quite a bit. I'm with you, though, as far as all the other stuff. I don't think we should be using, anybody who really likes this movie, I don't think we should be using it as ammunition to trash the Arnold version. I haven't talked to Scott about this directly, but on Vodka Stream the other day, Dave was mentioning that Scott really likes this version more than the Arnold version and had some disparaging comments about the Arnold version. I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was just, when I heard it, I was just like, well, damn, okay, we're not gonna run the Arnold movie over with a train. I mean, yes, I do think that Edgar Wright's version is superior. I do think that, subjectively speaking, from a storytelling standpoint and from all the other aspects that you're talking about. But the Arnold movie is still what it is. It's still a classic. It's still relevant. It goes into, for me, it just further cements itself in that 80s and 90s action movie center, which, of course, I love those movies, right? I have a soft spot for those movies. I don't care, argue with a wall. So it just goes right there, slots in with Commando and the first Predator and, Kindergarten Cop and Twins and, the Last Action Hero, anything directed by McTiernan or Cameron or anything like that. Certainly it falls, or Total Recall, Paul Verhoeven, of course, can't forget that one. Absolutely. It goes into that realm, if you will. But I also feel like people like Scott, because I know Scott is a King disciple, and probably a massive reason that he loves this one more than the Arnold version is because it's closer, much closer to the King novel. And I haven't read the King novel yet. I will, because I have that. I bought it digitally. I was trying to read it before seeing the movie. That did not work out. But the, the the idea that it's that much closer to the source material, and I know that that can be a real prickly thing with King adaptations. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just does not translate as well, or isn't translated as well, I should say. Not that the book doesn't translate, but those doing the translating do not translate it as well. And I think this is an adaptation where it does translate. Edgar Wright did do a strong job of translating the book, and I think that is what Scott probably appreciates, if I had to venture a guess. Like I said, I have not talked to him directly about it yet. I've just heard how he feels about it and how he enjoys it more than the Arnold film. That is something that he and I should probably discuss at some point. I know he's busy these days and whatnot. He was on Vodka Stream a couple weeks ago, and I did talk to him briefly, but we didn't get a chance to talk about Running Man because they came in later. But either way, continuing with the rest of Stu's thoughts on the current Running Man, he says, I also think Glenn Powell does a great job at playing Ben Richards as a sympathetic underdog, but also a believable action star with a bubbling anger at his lot that I think a lot of people can relate to. Powell's been impressing me with his range lately between this and the recent sports comedy series Chad Powers on Hulu. Supporting cast of Jamie Lawson as his wife Sheila, Lee Pace as headhunter McCone, as well as Katie O'Brien as thrill-seeking fellow running woman, and Michael Cera are all memorable too. Yeah, I thought the cast was great. Seriously, top to bottom. Had no issues with anyone. Certainly not Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell certainly did lead the movie, and very capable leading the movie, did lead the movie very well. I agree with you on that. He says, I do think the third act could be a little tighter as it introduces a new companion character that doesn't quite get the screen time she deserves to matter like she should, and maybe the action-heavy promotional stuff creates certain unfair expectations of the film, as it takes a bit of time to get to that. There's also a good bit of suspense-building, cat-and-mouse sequences, as well as just slower character stuff, but I think Wright handles it all well and captures the cyberpunky mix of high-tech and dystopic imagery well. He also says it was also a fun bonus for me to try to spot the Glasgow locations they dressed up for parts of it, some of which did completely pass me by due to the post-production work on it. Also being based more on the Stephen King book, there's a low-key It tie-in at one point too. Yes, there is. I caught it. I actually caught it. There absolutely is. You're right. I hope the film can do well on home video or physical release because I think Edgar Wright deserves to get more shots at blockbuster filmmaking. Well, that's about it for me this time. Take care, Stu. So that last part that you say there, that you think Edgar Wright deserves to get more shots of blockbuster filmmaking, I agree. Here's the thing. I feel like he's one of those, it's almost like he is a brainier Tony Scott. And I say that because Tony Scott to me is still, may he rest in peace, the best pure action film director ever of all time. And he had this way of making action films that, that all the action and all the blockbuster elements were there, but it was still emotional. It was still thought-provoking. There was still a story behind it, okay? Top Gun still has a story, however cheaply you want to think of the action, the blockbuster action, the original one that is. True Romance, written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Tony Scott, right? And you can see where the difference is, but it's a Tarantino script, and there's still, like, character development, all the Tarantino aspects and elements of his characters and story and whatnot are there, but it's a Tony Scott blockbuster 80s or really early 90s action vehicle, right? Enemy of the State, brilliant film. Incredibly brilliant film, right? But it's a loaded cast that you could not assemble today monetarily or otherwise for a variety of reasons. But it totally does an incredible job there. And so I feel like Edgar Wright is kind of the same thing where I don't know that his action movies are going to be blockbusters at the box office. I don't know that they're going to turn heads and really wow audiences, but they're going to be really good. They're going to be thought-provoking. They're going to have great character development. They're going to have the really awesome elements of the story, especially in adaptation form like this, right? And I think Edgar Wright is really good at that. So it's one of those where I agree that he deserves to get more shots at blockbuster filmmaking, but I think studios need to recognize that it may not be the monetary, and that's maybe what holds him back is, if he's not going to make the grosses, if it's not going to get the big dollars at the box office, then they're going to be reluctant to do that. And it's unfortunate because he still has stories to tell. And maybe it comes down to marketing. Maybe it comes down to approach. I don't know what has to change with respect to that, but I don't think he has to change anything, truthfully. I think I like his way of storytelling in that regard. And with respect to the third act character that you're talking about, I've heard people, I think even Dave said that he thought that she needed more development, that character needed more development. I thought it was a perfect intro and a perfect amalgamation of a real world allegory that had as much screen time as needed to convey that particular perspective on who she represents. Like, I thought it worked really well for the time given. I thought the time, I didn't, to me, I didn't feel like it needed more like development because I felt like that character being as surface level as it was part of the character and part of the introduction and part of what we're supposed to know about the analogy, about the allegory that is being made with her in that regard. So I actually really enjoyed that, thought it was perfectly fine. But I hear you. It's all subjective to each their own in that regard. But at the end of the day, we both enjoyed that film. And I have not run into anybody that has not enjoyed that film. And I'm sure there are people out there like, well, it's nothing like the Arnold movie, but that's why I say it's not a remake. It's not. It's not a remake at all. It is a different adaptation of the original King novel and, far closer to the source material from everything that I understand of the source material. So, that's where it is. And that's how people should proceed if they do decide to go see that film in that regard. So hopefully they do. As always, Stu, thank you for the feedback. Greatly appreciated. I don't know if you celebrate the holiday, but if so, happy Thanksgiving to you, good sir. We will see you on the other side of it. All right, next up, Alex De Silva. His email literally answers a question that I kind of like off the cuff asked last week. Because we were talking about, that there's a saying for black people that age very gracefully, black don't crack. And I said, is there an equivalent of that for the Asian population? And literally the title of his email is Flight Chat number 26, Asian Don't Raisin, which I also want to point out, Stu Little, he sent me that on Threads the other day as well. I think I've heard that, but that's kind of a new one on me, to be honest with you. So that's the title of Alex's email for this week. So let's see what else he's got to talk about here. He says, "Hey Ray, the Patriots win streak continues. By this point, I think the team has proven that this isn't just a fluke and that they're actually a pretty strong team this year, especially in regards to our quarterback. May's got it, and the fact that he's so young makes the future look very bright indeed." Well, I will tell you, I had to wait a little bit because I'm, again, recording this on a Sunday. I didn't necessarily intend to, but I had to wait and see exactly if their win streak did continue, and it did. They beat the Bengals, but like barely. It was like 26-20. Today seems to be one of those weird days. Like the NFL does this, where like the teams that you think should just get boat raced by the better teams end up putting up a fight and in some cases winning. Right now, the Lions are embroiled in a battle for their damned lives against the Giants of all teams. And it really has not been a great year for the Lions, to be honest with you, whatsoever. And the fact that they are in this much of a battle with the New York Giants in overtime at home, right before they're supposed to play the Packers on Thanksgiving is just, it's no good. There are issues whatsoever. So, but hey, Drake May and the future of the Patriots, I don't think your dynasty is coming back. I think you should pump the brakes on that. I don't think Vrabel is the next Belichick and May is the next Brady. I don't think that whatsoever because I think the league is very different now. But the Patriots clearly are one of the better teams in the league this year. There's no question about it. As one could call it a fluky year, but I don't think you're necessarily winning football games in a fluky fashion. So we'll see how it goes and we'll see how it translates. With respect to that, you're certainly faring better than some of the other perennial AFC contenders, right? You're faring better than the Chiefs, who I know they're tied going into OT with the Colts, who I think the Colts might have been favored. I think, I don't know, but yeah, between them and then the Steelers, they lost to the Bears earlier today. They're in quarterback issues with Aaron Rodgers and all that stuff and whatnot, Mason Rudolph and everything. I don't know who started today, but yeah, no, it's a weird year. It's a different year. It's kind of an upside down year, if you will, for the NFL. But the Patriots are taking advantage of that. So there you go. You have some things to look forward to with a bright future. I would agree. He says there was some talk in a recent flight chat about the Asian equivalent of black don't crack. See my subject line, no further elaboration needed. Yeah, that's probably wise. Thank you for answering the question just with the statement that you're saying that you heard, and we can move on from that. Appreciate that. He says, I heard recently that Funko is struggling currently as a company, financially speaking. Do you think the Funko fad could be fading? The alliteration there was unintended, albeit welcome. I heard somebody the other day compare Funkos to Beanie Babies, and there's probably a degree of truth to that, although clearly Funkos have lasted longer. But yeah, and there's been way more applications, like the Funkos, like movies, television, real life, sports, stuff like that. Like there's a wide range of it. But yeah, the fad, even though it lasted longer, I think, than Beanie Babies did, at least by my count, yeah, it could be ending. It definitely could be fading, for what it is, and maybe it'll just, hopefully, it won't go completely away, but maybe they'll scale back and not flood the marketplace so much. I know people that just have, like, they collect Funkos worse than I do physical media in that regard, as far as getting the specialty ones at Comic-Con, and getting special ones on eBay, and going to get, well, this one's only released here and that one's only released there. Like, they really go all in with respect to that. So yeah, I think it is slowing down. Definitely, the Fed certainly could be fading for sure. He says, additionally, do you think physical collecting could eventually become such a niche market that it could be difficult for companies catering to these markets to remain operational? It depends on what the physical is. I read a report the other day that said physical media, as far as Blu-ray discs and DVDs or whatnot, is actually, like, not even remotely dead and is booming rather well, truthfully, as far as, and I don't have, like, specific numbers on this, but I can tell you that the actions of physical releases, whether it's niche releases, boutique Blu-rays, or even just regular versions from studios, like, that hasn't gone away. I think the thing that's happened is that it's transitioned into online selling. And that's really what it's going to come down to. I think it's less about physical collecting and more about the medium in which they're being sold. Like, it's easy to go into Best Buy and say, oh, well, they don't sell Blu-rays anymore. Blu-rays must be dying. Or, go into Target or where else, see the same thing. But online, like, these things get shipped through Amazon, through eBay, through all of the retailers, and again, specific retailers. Like, for example, Lionsgate Limited. Lionsgate Limited, every month they come out with a new list of new releases. Hey, here's what we're releasing for this month. Here's what we're releasing for that month. And there are pre-orders, and I wouldn't think that it would be that big of a thing, if pre-orders weren't selling out. That's the thing. Dogma, for example, the 4K steelbook of Dogma, because Dogma is a Lionsgate movie. They're making a 4K steelbook of it that's out on December 9th. And the first wave of it sold out. And they recently restocked, say, hey, it's back up for pre-order. We found a second wave. Okay, cool. And so they're taking more pre-orders before the 9th. But, if people weren't pre-ordering it, right? And I guess you could say, well, what if they're inflating it? What if they're trying to mark up that? Well, then it's working, is the thing, right? Because they're still making these physical media, like steelbooks and whatnot. They're still making these releases. They're just not selling them in big box stores. They're selling them online, and they're shipping them directly, for the heightened shipping costs and whatever the taxes are, depending on the region that you're buying it from, that type of deal. So to me, I don't think physical collecting is necessarily dying or becoming that much of a niche. I think that it's just switching to online selling. That's what I really think it is. The collectors and the buyers are buying online. And so that's what we would really have to see, is like, okay, well, how do the online sales compare with respect to that? But yeah, I think that in order for a company to remain operational for physical collecting, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to adapt to the marketplace and, be ready to, ship out and, not rely so much on big box or storefronts. I think that's what's really becoming difficult. It's difficult to remain operational if you're a big box store or a storefront. If you have a physical location, if you're online, I think you can most certainly survive. At least there's every indication at this point that you can survive in that regard. So that's what I would say with respect to that. It's something to look out for and to keep an eye on in that regard. But yeah, I have not seen, I would have thought, especially at 2 years ago, Best Buy discontinued selling. They got rid of their Blu-ray inventory. Their steelbooks that no longer sell physical media. I thought it would have slowed down. It has not. It has absolutely not slowed down. More releases have been put out, and more things continue to get physical releases. So that I from my own personal perspective, no, that is not dying. Most certainly it is not. It's just whether or not you're selling online or whether or not you're selling in a storefront. Because storefront stuff, I think that is unfortunately starting to, get slimmer. I won't say it's dying off, but I'll say it's getting slimmer. I'll put it that way. He says, what are your thoughts on the people who are complaining that it's ridiculous that there's a potential Jimmy Olsen show before we even have a clear pathway to Batman or Wonder Woman? I think those people are impatient assholes, truthfully, because who gives a shit? Like, especially in case of Batman. If you're like, we need a clear path to Batman before Jimmy Olsen deserves a show, well, you're an arrogant prick. You really are. You're an arrogant prick in that regard. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody here, but we shouldn't be prioritized. Like, you can have your own personal priority in terms of you personally want to see Batman or Wonder Woman, but if you're complaining that they're developing a Jimmy Olsen show beforehand, listen, I talked earlier about how I don't think that we should compare, like our when we talk about trying to predict what James Gunn's pattern is going to be for creative for the DCU, the MCU's pathway has informed our perspective on that. And I think he is going to go against the grain. But one thing he's not going to do, one thing that he and Saffron definitely are going to do, is they're not going to ignore side characters. And part of going off the beaten path is emphasizing side characters. And quite honestly, that's something that the MCU also informed, right? Think about it. Remember that Ant-Man has a trilogy. Remember that Thor has a quadrilogy. The Guardians of the Galaxy have a trilogy. Remember that. We have seen a market where smaller characters that are not the Trinity, that are not Spider-Man, that are not the X-Men, that are not even the Fantastic Four, have gotten multiple films and continue to get mentioned and continue to pop up in media and whatnot. We're past the point of Jimmy Olsen doesn't deserve a show before Batman or Wonder Woman. We are past that arrogant bullshit. We are. Whether people want to, and to me, anybody that says that, they're just proving their arrogance in that regard. Especially in the case of Batman. All the Batman content we've had our entire lives, and you're whining about a Jimmy Olsen show coming before the DCU version. Get the F out. Get the F out. Those people are arrogant gas bags, as far as I'm concerned. And that may seem harsh, but that's how I feel about it. Complain all you like, whine and cry. I got a shelf full of Batman content that I keep referring to that I can keep me warm as a Batman fan until we figure out what the DCU Batman is going to be, or until the Batman Part 2 releases as well. And as far as Wonder Woman is concerned, I mean, come on, seriously. There's no reason to shat on Jimmy Olsen because you have a superiority complex with the Trinity. There is no reason for that. Okay, so those are my thoughts on those people. And again, it's potential. It's not confirmed whatsoever. It's an idea that clearly is being bantered about because Gunn didn't debunk it, but he wouldn't also confirm it either. So it's an idea out there. But I'm pretty sure he told us with respect to Wonder Woman. I mean, we heard about Brave and the Bold, and we heard about Anna Nagara writing the Wonder Woman script before this Jimmy Olsen show idea came up. So what the hell are they complaining about in the first place? As far as the natural progression of things, fans just really need to get their heads out of their asses a lot of times and be more patient about what's going on with the universe and see how things work out, because it's not all for Batman fans. It's not all for Wonder Woman fans. It's not all for Trinity fans, okay? Think about how long Superman fans have been toiling until they got their movie this year, okay? Seriously, Jimmy Olsen fans and anybody out there, or what Phil said. Phil said earlier, he just wants a good Bat Family movie. Hey, Bat Family fans, I mean, beyond Batman, right? Bat Family fans are people that want to see Dick Grayson and Jason Todd and Tim Drake and Damian Wayne and Barbara Gordon. Bat Family fans, all they have right now in live action is Titans. That's it. Titans. And even though I like Titans, it's very subjective. So enough with this hierarchy and this ranking. I can't believe they would do this before that. No, whatever. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Arrogant fan nonsense. That's how I feel about it, truthfully. All right. On to your Next Generation watch. Oh, you watched a couple. Here we go. He said, this time around for the Next Generation, I watched a trio of episodes. First up was Night Terrors. A thought I had during this episode, and many times before in this series, is that Star Trek shows a lot of similar tropes to ones you'd find in sailing stories. In this case, I was reminded of the ghost ship trope. Yeah, I mean, and you can understand because, it is essentially, Starfleet is the space navy. It absolutely, it's naval. Absolutely. I mean, think of the command structure. Think of what they're doing. I mean, they're essentially sailing in space. So, yeah, absolutely. You're 1,000% correct on that. And that is most certainly an idea of the ghost ship trope. No question about it. Yes. And listen, there's episodes of the original series that are absolutely like that as well, for sure. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. That's a spot-on analysis, if you will, Alex. He says, next up was Identity Crisis. He said, I was a teensy bit taken out of the moment in the holodeck whenever the program froze and the frozen actors were just swaying as they tried to remain still. Maybe actually freezing the frame while Geordi walked around the actors was too complicated for the show at the time? Probably. I mean, you're talking what, 1990? This is season 4. So yeah, 1990. That probably was, I mean, even with all the blue screen and whatnot, it was probably just not in the budget. It's in the budget now, obviously, but not then. for sure, no doubt. And also, I would say that there's also other. Give it another season or so, and you may see an example of that that's better in that regard. I personally didn't see what you were talking about in terms of the swaying and whatnot. I mean, if you were examining, like if you're looking like real close, like you can see them breathing, but again, you're looking for it. You're looking to see, well, is this actually them or is this a frozen frame, right? And most people are not going to catch that. There just aren't. So even in older shit. But either way, he says, what I did like about it, though, was the whole crime scene investigation in the holodeck. It honestly reminded me of the Batman Arkham games, where there are some missions where you, as Batman, literally recreate crimes with your bat tech to figure out what happened, similar to what Jordy was doing by having the computer rewind footage and stuff. The mystery in this one was pretty satisfying overall, he says. There were enough clues and hints dropped that I was actually able to figure out what was going on about one scene before it was revealed. It was the whole Sherlock quote about once you eliminate all possibilities, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. I was watching and thought, I don't know how a shadow is being cast there unless there's literally an invisible person standing around. And then one scene later, voila, we got the reveal of the invisible alien. Yeah, Identity Crisis is one of the creepier episodes of the series, in my opinion, and it was done really well. But yeah, it's definitely got the whole whodunit mystery scenario in that regard for sure. And then he says, finally, I watched The Nth Degree. The opening scene was painful to watch. That actor did a great job of acting like he doesn't know how to act. Dwight Schultz, right? Barkley's actor. I'm pretty sure that's who he's talking about. I had a feeling that the probe gave Barkley supercomputer abilities, and then that was pretty much confirmed in the holodeck scene later on. Yeah, I mean, and Reg at that point had only had like an episode or two of introduction, but if you knew enough about the character, it's like, yeah, he's clearly, and that's why I think that opening scene was as painful to watch, is because you had to show for people that hadn't seen Hollow Pursuits or were familiar with the Barkley character just how much of a transition his character was going to make, so that it didn't seem organic or natural at all. It's like, nah, he's like completely different at this point. The probe did clearly change him in that regard. He says in this episode they're transported to the center of the galaxy and they meet the Cytherians. The only thing is, doesn't the center of the galaxy have a massive black hole, meaning travel there would be highly perilous and nigh on impossible? Or is that not the case in the Star Trek universe? I mean, honestly, Alex, of all the things with respect to suspension of disbelief with Star Trek, I think that travel around the center of the Milky Way with a supermassive black hole would be still possible in that regard, right? I mean, it says the Cytherians were near the center of the Milky Way galaxy. We don't know how far away from the center they are. We really don't. And on top of that, if you watch the movies, the center of the galaxy has actually been reached before in the Star Trek universe. So perhaps the headcanon is that the supermassive black hole isn't there in the Star Trek universe, or the center of the galaxy is a more broad term and covers a lot more ground than just where the black hole is located. That's also possible as well. But either way, I feel like all the suspension and disbelief that we have in the franchise, that's the least of concerns with respect to that, to be honest with you. And I realize that they try to root it in a lot of actual science, but come on, they also fudge a lot of stuff as well in that regard. So either way, it is what it is. Next episode is called Cupid, Live Long and Prosper. Alex. Oh, I wonder how he's going to feel about Cupid. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. That's an interesting one to gauge his reaction on. He may or may not enjoy that one. We'll see. I forget what Amr said about it. Amr had a detailed explanation of it, but I forget exactly what his thoughts on that were. We'll see. We will find out soon enough what Alex has to think about that particular episode. I will try not to lead the witness any further and just say thank you as always for the feedback. Good sir, greatly appreciated. If you celebrate the holiday, enjoy it, and we shall certainly see you on the other side of it. There was one Instagram comment from Amari Daniels. He commented on last week's Flight Chat, and he was talking about video games because some video game stuff had been brought up in the last Flight Chat. And he says, I hear you about that backlog of games to get around to. I missed the boat on getting a Switch, and by the time I started getting a few Switch games, the Switch 2 was on the horizon. So I'm biding my time to buy a Switch 2 and take advantage of that wonderful backwards compatibility. And I wonder how that works, because backwards compatibility is not always universal, like in terms of how far back generations it goes and how things work. And sometimes it's hardware based, sometimes it's software based. So I can't tell you with complete certainty how backwards compatibility works. with the Switch 2 compared to the original Switch, I'm uncertain of that, Amari. But yeah, I hear you. Uh, it is a massive backlog to get through. There are just so many games that I have not played. I think this has been coming up a lot recently because I have some coworkers that have been talking about how Red Dead Redemption 2 is like the greatest game they've ever played, and it's this and it's that, and I haven't played it because I played 5 minutes of Red Dead Redemption 1, and I've never played 2. And I'm also still behind. I still haven't played Grand Theft Auto 5, right? So, like, the next Rockstar game I play will be Grand Theft Auto 5 before I even play the Red Dead games. But it's like, where do I find time to play any of this shit, to be honest with you? And I would love to be able to find time for it. And I don't know. It's just, oi. It's just so many things in real life get in the way of that. But yeah, I hear you. As far as that, and this, we were talking Mario and stuff and whatnot lately a lot, especially with that new Mario trailer that came out for the new Mario Galaxy 2 movie, or for the Mario Galaxy movie, I should say. But yeah, no, it's a massive backlog, and I totally understand waiting for the Switch 2 if you don't already have a Switch. Now, I'm thinking of it the other way. It's like, okay, what games are going to be on the Switch 2 that I can't play on my Switch that would actually force me to upgrade? Well, it's certainly not happening anytime soon because I'm not even playing my Switch, to be honest with you. I gotta get back into that and play some games for the Switch before I even think about going to a Switch 2 in that regard. So, too much shit to watch, too much shit to read, too much shit to play. Yep, too much media to consume in general. Thank you for that comment, though, as always, Amari, and enjoy the Thanksgiving holiday as well, good sir, should you indeed celebrate it. And as always, let's close things out with an email from Jared Cardos. No subject line, but he says, "Hey, Ray, hope you're doing well. Before I start on your recent episodes, I wanted to let you know about something new that was just announced and talk about a new show I have to recommend. First, there's a new Star Trek comic coming out in February that I think will be up your alley, a one-shot called Star Trek Deviations, Threads of Destiny, which will be about Lieutenant Uhura being sent back through time during the Civil Rights Movement during 1963. It's being written by Stephanie Williams, who I believe I showed you in the past a living single Marvel Heroines webcomic she wrote back in the day, and she's done some great work in the past, specifically her Nubia and the Amazons book she did at DC. Jared, I knew about this. Thank you for bringing it to my attention, but one of the Star Trek accounts, actually a couple of Star Trek accounts I follow in Threads, TrekCore and a few others, brought this up. And I've seen this cover, and yep, absolutely it's up my alley, of course. And I will certainly endeavor to read this, especially in February, well timed with respect to Black History Month indeed. So thank you for letting me know about that. He says, also, I have to shout out a new mini-series that recently debuted on Netflix called Death by Lightning. It's a historical drama set in the 1870s about James Garfield's rise to the presidency, as well as Charles Guiteau, a mentally ill man who went from being an activist for Garfield to being his assassin. It's a very well-made and fascinating look at a time of history that I don't think gets a lot of attention or is generally known about. It highlights both the optimistic dreams and crushing realities of politics that feels prescient even now. It has some excellent performances by Michael Shannon as Garfield, Matthew McFadden as Guiteau, and Nick Offerman as Garfield's vice president and sometimes antagonist, Chester Arthur. And it's only 4 episodes, which is packed, but still feasible to watch in a night or a weekend. Overall, highly recommended for anyone who are fans of the actors involved or are curious about that moment in history. He did send the trailer. I have not watched it yet, but I'm very familiar with all the actors that he listed. Intriguing. All right, thank you for that Netflix recommendation. I will not get into how long my Netflix catch-up list is. But he says a couple of notes from the past Flight Cast. John talks about the movie K-Pop Demon Hunters, so this will be Flight Chat, which I've also seen recently, he says, K-Pop Demon Hunters. It's funny, I thought I had talked about it here on the chat before, but looking at past emails, I can't seem to find it, so quick thoughts on it. When it was initially announced, it wasn't really on my radar, he says. I don't even get much into American pop, let alone the K variety. But after seeing so many people rave about it, and saw that it actually became #1 at the box office when it was released in theaters for a weekend, on a weekend with no big movies coming out, but still very impressive, I figured I should see what the fuss was all about, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. It kind of reminds me of the Spider-Verse movies, in that it's very well animated with some fun action sequences and funny and expressive facial animations that give the characters a lot of, well, character. The titular demon hunters are fun to watch. While the lead singer Rumi has the biggest character arc, the rest of the cast also have great moments to shine. It also has some great themes about acceptance and self-love, the dangers of repression that leads to self-loathing, and it does it in a way that is both accessible to kids and identifiable for adults. And I have to say, the music is catchy, he says. I'm still saying that K-pop isn't really my thing, but I have to admit a couple songs may have entered my Spotify rotation. Overall, it's a pretty good flick, he says. During his email, John described it as a cheeseburger movie, and I'll agree to some extent, but elaborate that it's more like a really good cheeseburger from a sit-down restaurant. I think it's something that'll definitely be up your alley. Add it to the list. It's on the Netflix list. All right. He says on Kirk in TOS and his proclivities, I think I worded it wrong by calling it fan theory. I would say it's more of an exaggeration. You would think from some fans or parodies of the original series that Kirk went thrusters full on any green-skinned babe they stumbled across, but it's really not as much as one might expect. No, it's not. Exaggerated is a good way to put it. Yes, it does get stretched out. But yeah, again, if you go back to the original series, I mean, it's not every episode, but when he encounters certain women in more than a few episodes, the charm is activated. Most certainly it is, without question. I mean, even some where it's like it's supposed to be take Mirror Mirror for example. Just the character of Marlena Moreau. I'm gonna temper what I say because I don't want to spoil Amr if he's gonna watch more of the original series. But him and Marlena, that was a situation where it's like, okay, there's a certain way that he's kind of expected to play this, and even then he still towed the line and really was like, okay, you're playing this one particular way, but it's still a little closer to the way that, the debonair way, the suave way that he played it. And it's like, all right, okay, either way. I'm not really saying it as a bad thing necessarily. It's just, it is an aspect of his character for sure. He says, I definitely appreciate the lengths you went to explain what's been going on with the WBD buyout. The whole Saudi Arabia is going to buy Warner Brothers and restore the Snyderverse was such a weird rumor, and you trounced it succinctly, even if it isn't entirely needed. I feel like that rumor could be easily quashed by someone honestly asking themselves, why would the Saudis do that? But ultimately, I'm with you that I'm just waiting for the sale to be finalized already. As of right now, just barely missing the cutoff point, we apparently know that Paramount, Comcast, and Netflix have made bids, and I guess we're just going to have to wait and see who had the best bid. And that'll do it for me this week, I think. Thank you for reading and looking forward to your future episodes. Thank you as always for the feedback, Jared. Yeah, the bids were 2 days ago. It's between those three. It is. Those are the three potential suitors. And Paramount believes they have the leg up, allegedly, because they're offering to buy the whole thing, so that the separation between streamers and studios and Discovery Global won't be necessary because they will have all of it and they will keep all of it together, they say. But in the other cases, for both Universal and Netflix, they only want streamers and studios. So Warner Brothers would still have to do the work of separating before selling the streamers and studios to either one of them. So it really just comes down to what's going to be more bang for David Zaslav and the shareholders' buck, to either sell the whole thing to Paramount up front or to split first and then piecemeal sell it to Universal and Netflix. And listen, that's for them to determine and decide. I think if we end up getting a decision in December, like Dave the Film Junkie was suggesting, I think that it's going to be Paramount. I think it will ultimately be Paramount. And I still think that ultimately it will be Paramount that does come out on top with this, truthfully. I do think that's going to happen. It's just a question of whether or not that share price, that $30 a share price, was actually going to be met. And I think perhaps they will consider the juice being worth the squeeze on that one. Maybe Larry doesn't believe in it, but I think David does. And I think he's going to find the investors, whether they're Saudi Arabia or not, to help him sweeten that deal. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I'm with you. I just need to, can we find out sooner rather than later so that we can get all this speculation, all this nonsense, and, so I can remind people that, all of the one percenters in Hollywood wear red hats, and your worries about what Paramount is going to do to DC are somewhat unfounded, considering that they're cut from the same cloth as David Zaslav, who actually created DC Studios and hired Gunn and Safran to make Superman and allowed all of the quote unquote super woke stuff in Superman to see the light of day. Because he at the end of the day wants the money. Because at the end of the day, that's all these one percenters want. All these studio heads want is the money, regardless of your worries about politics and whatnot. With respect to that, that's more of a news thing to be worried about, not so much a content thing as far as movies and television to be worried about. Seriously, historically speaking, go down the list and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But either way, thank you as always for the feedback, Jared. Greatly appreciated. Have a good holiday if you indeed celebrate, and we shall see you along with everybody else on the other side of it. And that will do it for this week's episode of Flight Chat. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to everyone that sent in emails this week. Thank you to John. Thank you to Sam Otten. Thank you to Phil Barker. Thank you to Stu Little. Thank you to Alex. Thank you to Jared. And thank you to Amari for your Instagram posts as well. Thank you to everyone for their feedback this week. Hope everybody enjoyed the answers and got the good answers out of it. Hopefully we were able to inform some people and have some good discussion as we always do. If you have any other thoughts with respect to movies, TV, and other sort of media, and you want to join the feedback circle here at the Flight Chat, you can find me on Threads and on Instagram at the FlightCast, on Blue Sky at FlightCast. You can comment on the posting for this episode on the FlightCast YouTube channel, youtube.com/theflightcast, where this episode is posted every week. There is also the FlightCast Facebook page, and of course I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, happy Thanksgiving to all of you who celebrate, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.